Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of racing action in the premier GT3 racing series known as the SimRacing International Thursday GT3 Championship. It's season 11 and it's brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. That's right, another Thursday evening comes around and we have made our way to round number 3 of 10 in the championship, and my goodness what a venue we are at today, for we are in Portugal at none other than the Autódromo Internacional do Algarve, more commonly referred to of course as the Portimão Circuit. A young circuit, having only been opened in 2008, it has a very old school vibe about it. Indeed, many liken this to Portugal's own equivalent of Spa-Francorchamps or indeed the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Why exactly is that when you consider it's only 2.85 miles in length and those circuits are at least double if not quadruple the length if not even more? Well, simply put, at its core is an absolutely brilliant array of 15 corners. For those corners in themselves, they pack variety, whether it be hairpins, chicanes or sweepers, but on top of that as well, you have a never-ending flow of elevation changes, which when intermingled into those corners make it feel like a circuit that dates all the way back to the 1950s and 1960s. However, with the modern twist of the fact that it has a wide-open road racing surface, it does mean that this circuit you can go for battles into each and every corner and run at least 2, if not 3 wide. Therefore, many would say on the European continent this arguably is the ultimate template of a racing circuit made for the modern era for making sure to retain all those old-school elements which we all know and love and which drew us to motorsport in the very first place. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this live broadcast from Circuit Side as you tune in tonight and you catch all the racing action on the SimRacing International YouTube channel. Indeed, go to youtube.com and search for SimRacing International or SRI and you can be tuning in there and joining many spectators who tune in, week out. Of course, you're catching all the racing action from Split A's round number 3 of the championship. We do have 2 broadcasts going on in parallel. We're also on the YouTube channel at this moment. We also have the broadcast live from Circuit Side for Split B, where you'll be catching all the racing action from the Premier and Evo classes, as brought to you by none other than Darragh Thacker and also Chaz Draycott. But meanwhile, here in Split A, you're in the comfortable commentary booth with none other than myself. My name is Paul Walsh, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action as it unfolds from our Elite and Pro classes over the entirety of the season. As we do say hello there to Dean VRS, who are already cheering on Team, and I do believe that's in reference to Team Modig. But let us know who you're cheering on. Let us know how you're doing, of course, as we make our way towards the end of another week, and I believe it is, of course, the penultimate week of January. And whilst this can be a bit of a down month, if you are feeling a bit down right now, don't frown, be happy, because we're going to turn that smile around and make sure that come the end of today you've got some absolutely incredibly racing action, which is probably going to give you a slightly sleepless night. But as we make our way into today, of course, well, let's give you a recap of the proceedings so far and what lies in wait after our first 2 rounds. So we start off then by taking a look back at our calendar. And as we can see, well, we opened up all the way back on the 9th of January at the Sachsenring. In fact, it was the 8th, and there in Germany for our first 1-hour feature race, where it's just as much about track position as it was your ability to overtake. The last time out on the 15th of January with round number 2, we saw our first 2 30-minute sprint race round. In our 2 shorter races there at the Daytona International Speedway's road course, a very different style of circuit for the fact we decided to have sprint races there. Many were wondering, why did we not have the 1-hour feature there? Well, we do like to mix things up here in the SimRacing International GT3 Championship, and it definitely served to mix things up by turning those 2 races into ferocious slipstream slogs. And as we saw in race number 1, well, there were many a question mark with regards to who would be able to make progress in the pro class with an absolute monster performance, meanwhile, by one man in particular, and it was none other than what was our driver who took victory of Villiers in race number 1, whereby he absolutely dominated the class in qualifying, almost taking the overall pole position, albeit in the end Benedictus Sinkevicius was able to steal it away in the elite class from him. How Katona was able to put so much distance between himself and his pro peers in race number 1, nobody else could find a way to get anything done other than to battle for 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Meanwhile, in the elite class in that first race, we got to see Sinkevicius lead from start to finish, and in the end it was his teammate Lewis Kenyon who was able to make his way through into 2nd place overall and act as the rear guard for Vulkan Motorsports. But then race number 2 came around and it completely flipped everything around, whereby we saw what was your front runners, none other than Wesley Van Rens, the leading pro driver. He had a false start. He went too early in his enthusiasm and suddenly the entire pro field opened up as quickly as that. And well, what else happened after that? Well, Villiers, he was then the 2nd favourite to go on to take back-to-back victories, where it all went wrong for him with an early incident, and suddenly one man in particular who'd brought his way all the way through to 2nd place in the first race, Fotis Katios, he was able to do it once again and coming home for his first win of the season, albeit he was not left alone. He had Harry Shaw breathing down his neck every lap from what was 15 minutes in all the way to the very finish of the 30 minutes. Meanwhile, in the elite class, well, it was absolute warfare out on the circuit, but fair warfare at that, where we got to see Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, or MTD as he's also known, take his first win of the season after his difficulties in race number 1. Following contact with Danny Van Oom, when we got to see him enjoy a very close battle with Mark Hutchinson and Ryan Nickerson, and also Hayden Miller, but the biggest name he battled with was none other than William Humphrey, who in the end, the two of them had an incredible run to the finish line, but MTD, or Tomlinson-Dennis, would take that win by 8 thousandths over Humphrey. So therefore, that set the stage coming into today. In an elite class, we've got a regular set of names that are starting to battle for the wins at the front. In the pro class, there has been the grand shuffle, but can anybody avoid a reshuffle today? And well, as we make our way into the 22nd of January here at the Portimão Grand Prix circuit, we will see. But of course, we have one other thing that can serve to shuffle things up today, and you may notice it with the question mark next to the name of the circuit. That's right, mixed conditions here today. Now, I've looked at the forecast. At the moment, at least, there's no sign of any rain on the horizon, at least for the qualifying session that's currently going on. But you never know when the rain could strike in the race. Indeed, it only takes a small drop of rain, and suddenly it can completely change the outlook of the race, even if you're going down to the dry tyres all the way to the very end. And we will see, because after this round, of course, we'll make our way back to sunny skies. We'll head back to the US state of Florida, and it will be the Miami Grand Prix circuit that makes its debut in this series for round number 4 on the 29th of January. But coming into this round, how do the standings stand after 2 rounds? We start with the Elite Championship class, and as we can see in our Elite Drivers Championship, it is Lewis Kenyon who leads with 2 second places and a 6th. He is proven to be Mr. Consistent in some regard. However, that 6th place last time will leave him scratching his head a little bit, wondering where the points exactly went, because it means he only stands 5 points ahead of William Humphrey, who sits in 2nd by comparison for Vulkan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing, chasing after the Vulkan Motorsports driver at 9 right now. He really has been truly the most consistent driver over the season with 2 podiums and a 4th place, but no win to his name. Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, he sits in 3rd for World Racing with STR Esports, and 132 points. He'll be ruining the fact that it didn't quite work out in race number 1 at Daytona, although I do believe he's had a chat with Benedictus Sinkevicius, and they've been able, not in fact with him, Danny Van Oom, let me get my names correct there and the history correct, and well, they've sorted things out and they're moving forward there. Indeed, it was an instant that in the end it came down to fine margins, but understanding now the Mercedes driver is only looking forwards, and he'll be hoping to have more podiums, if not a win to his name today. Then we do have Seb Pereg sitting in 4th place, and the Vulkan Motorsports driver right now, after that incredible strategic win at the Sachsenring in round number 1, well, things came completely undone last time in the Acura NSX Evo, and he'll be wondering whether he can get back on fine form today, as he sits ahead there of Benedictus Sinkevicius, who's in 5th, his teammate just behind there, having taken his maiden win of the season last time out, for that 17th place in what's the 2nd race at Daytona, completely blunting his momentum. Ryan Nickerson sits in 6th place there for the Split Track Esports team, unfortunate not to take a podium in race number 2 at Daytona after what was an absolutely brilliant effort after his recovery drive in race number 1. And then we do see Hayden Miller in 7th place there, the Vulkan Motorsports driver who had a non-finish in the Sachsenring race. Of course, battling hard in the early stages, but it all went wrong. But back-to-back 3rd places, he's finally got his championship campaign underway. Just ahead by 16 points of a Thomas Pugh there for Axis Sim Sports. And then we do have Team Modig and Mark Hutchinson completing that top 10. Outside the top 10, by the best part of 9 points, is Max Wheeler in his Audi R8 Evo 2. And he'll be ahead of Jesper Svensson there, who completes the elite top 12. Coming to the pro class meanwhile, and here we can see the complexion is a little bit different. We have a leader who's trying to break away for Tisketios right now, who has proven to be the mainstay at the very front with that 5th place at the Sachsenring after he was leading the race in the early stage in Germany, but the pace fell away for him, but not so at Daytona. And I'll tell you one thing right now, Katios, if he deserved a title after Daytona, it would be the sprint race stunner, because that man, he knows how to get the most out of the McLaren within the space of 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, the tyres go dry, and I can tell you one thing, he doesn't need them to last that long in the sprint races, and that's why he was an absolute lightning rod last time out at Daytona. But meanwhile, Reece Saunders, the Ford Mustang, did not look comfortable at Daytona whatsoever after a qualifying session, which he'd rather write off, and a race number 1 as well, which was absolutely instant prone. However, in race number 2, he did very well to recover, indeed, taking that 5th place finish in the end, the Altitude 3M Esports driver. Well, he's looking forward to tonight, I can tell you that, when I caught up with him down in the paddock before today. He was saying, keep your eyes out for me, because I'm going to look to come on strong. Liam Fraser sits in 3rd place for Moonshiners Racing Club, and well, Daytona was not a day to remember, but his 2nd place on the Sachsenring was, and therefore he sits a further 16 points behind, but he's ahead by 13 points over Villa Katonen. And while the non-finisher for Beowulf Racing Team in race number 2 at Daytona, he'll be thinking to himself one thing and one thing only: why did I throw all those points away? And he needs to prove today he's not going to throw them away anymore, otherwise he might be off to a very rocky start. Chris Jennings sits a further 14 points behind for Axis Sim Sports, ahead of the privateer Matthew Jordan. And then we do have Nicholas Carlson in 7th place there for the Beowulf Racing Team. And well, right now, Carlson taking his maiden podium last time out, and well done to him for that. that, but we're expecting a little bit more today as he tries to get into that top 5. Jamie Bardwell, Kyle Roy and Harry Shaw complete that top 10, and Shaw did look very impressive at Daytona after missing the season opener in Germany, and well, he was saying to the fact that he really enjoyed chasing down Katios in the late stages in the second race at Daytona, and we look forward to seeing whether he can chase that win today. He's ahead of Mikey Story by 3 points, and then Nathan Anstis completes your Pro Top 12. But as for the team's championship standings, here's your top 10, and remember, of course, these teams are spread across both splits. Whereby some will be teams entirely localised within Split A, some will be entirely localised within Split B, and some will be a mixture of the two. But either way, Vulkan Fasters by GlassTech Racing, they lead on 273 points, but they are only the best part of 8 points ahead of Moonshiners Racing Club. Is there further 3 points to GPX SimSport Onyx, and one of the big themes you're already seeing here perhaps is the fact that after 2 rounds, nobody has really taken control at the top or starting to build a lead, and all the margins right now are very tight. With Axis SimSport Blue there in 4th place, or the Y team, I do believe, on 257 points, only 5 ahead of Split Track Esports, the combination pair of Ryan Nickerson and Fotis Katios demonstrating you only need 2 of you to score points, and indeed the pair right now a very strong combination. The same can be said for MJK Sim Racing, who are both based in Split B of Victor Van Zist and Denny Ploger. They're ahead of Dexterous Motorsports Kumar by 6 points, and then we do have the Vulkan Motorsports 1 team ahead of their number 2 team, 8th and 9th, and well, this is definitely a reversal for fortunes after some great performances last season, of course, and indeed I do believe they were your team's champions last season by a significant margin with their Vulkan Motorsports Gold team, but right now it seems though they're off to a bit of a bumpy start, with Beowulf Racing Team only 6 points behind the pair. Outside the top 10 in 11th place, best of the rest right now, well, it's none other than 9 Pegasus Panther Racing on 210 points. They're 10 behind the top 10, and then they do have a 19-point advantage over the rest of the field as headed by 12th place team Altitude 3M Esports, who you don't see on screen, and that's where the split in the field is occurring. Outside the top 11, we do have a gap to 12th and downwards, but will we see that gap close, and can we see anybody in this top 10 start to break away today? Well, we're going to have to find out. And in terms of where we'll find out, we're going to find out here at our host circuit. It's the Portimão Grand Prix circuit, located near the city and the municipality from which it takes its name, in the Faro district of the Algarve region of Portugal, which is where it takes its mainstay name of the Autódromo Internacional do Algarve. But in that 2.85 miles in length, or 4.59 kilometres, depending on your preference of units, this 15-corner circuit, well, I'd like to say a big thank you to iRacing.com, not just the brilliant simulator, but also the absolutely superb track maps that come with it. However, the only problem with a 2-dimensional track map is the fact it doesn't bring to life all those 3-dimensional elevation changes, the verticality that you will see at this circuit. But what you can see immediately is the incredible corner variety. Whereas the drivers make the way down the start-finish straight, it really will feel like they're going down because it's a massive plunge into Primera at turn number 1, and through the quick triple right-hander, it's then in towards Lagos at turn number 3. Now coming out of the hairpin, they'll make the way uphill through the off-camber left-hander at turn number 4, that's unsighted at the apex, to then roar the way downhill into the hairpin at turn number 5. Back on themselves they'll come, through the Kinker 6, over the crest and down into turn 7, and they'll descend all the way down to Samsung corner at turn number 8, before going uphill over the rise and down into 9, and uphill again in towards Portimão Bend at turns 10 and 11, where you brake at 10 to set up your apex at turn number 11. Out of there, they'll then come downhill for the curve at 12, go uphill into the switchback hairpin sequence at turns 13 and Stegres at 14, and it's a long sweep through Gaup Corner at turn number 15 to complete lap and do it all over again. But Gaup Corner, it starts off high and it descends very dramatically there, and indeed it's a corner where you've got to have confidence in the grip of the tyres on your car. But as we get ready to go racing then, ladies and gentlemen, that is the scene. It's all been set, and therefore, without any regret, we make our way back to circuit side. So as we do, well, we look to our drivers who are currently out there at the moment, and the man who's parked up, he thinks he might have done enough, or at least he's taken a bit of a breather, is Seb Blower. He is currently the fastest of all drivers here in this qualifying session, elite and overall, and by the best part of what is none other than, I do believe, almost 2 tenths over his teammate for Vulkan Motorsports of Benedictus Sinkevicius. But who's out there at the moment? And we can see currently the fastest of what is your pro drivers, where it's DC Motorsports Wayne Douglas, part of their privateer outfit, and Douglas looking good. And I can tell you one thing right now, when I've been speaking to some of the guys at DC Motorsports, particularly speaking to Peter Duke, they've all been very keen to prove a point, which is they're not just here to make up the grid, they're also here to chase down the podiums, if not the win. And they're all looking right now for a bit of redemption after they've had quite a difficult opening 2 rounds. So we're looking forward to seeing what they're going to be able to do, given the fact that right now it hasn't been a season that starts off the way they've wanted it to, but sometimes that's the way the story goes. But of course, there are many chapters in the story of a championship, and they'll be hoping that they will be able to put a few put more positive chapters into the story as time goes on. Now, many have been eyeing up this man in the pro class because in the practice sessions early this week, he has proven to be one of, if not the fastest in the pro class, if not challenging the overall lead in the races against the elite drivers, each a pro of none other than Stephen Donnelly, and won the Haribo machine right now. He's currently 21st in that Ford Mustang, but never say never, to be fair. And in this qualifying session, they've got 45 minutes to set their best possible time. It's an extended session, which gives our drivers plenty of opportunity to try and set a time. But of course, there is a slight sword hanging over their heads, and it is the sword of where's the prospect of rain, and it could fall at any moment. And if the rain does, well, suddenly all these times that have been set in the dry as the clouds are gradually amassing here in Portugal. Well, the forecast right now does say the rain's going to stay away from qualifying, but the forecast isn't always right. Well, I'll tell you one thing right now, if the clouds do open up and the rain starts to fall, then suddenly nobody's going to be improving this qualifying session. It will turn more into a practice session where everyone's going to try and use the time to get used to what a damp circuit will feel like. And, well, one thing that is for certain, if you may remember and remind yourself all the way back to Season 9 when we raced here in the wet, at the time I was covering Split B, and in the Split B race for our Premier and Evo drivers, the rain, the fact the racing started off in the wet and the rain left and then it came back towards the end of the race, it completely shook up the field, because the way the water flows here at Portimão is the fact that because you've got several elevation changes entwined into the corners, you get streams or currents that form and flow around the circuit, and suddenly the racing line is no longer the optimal line. Now that is obvious whenever you race in the wet, in the fact the racing line isn't always optimal, but around here you suddenly have to completely mentally adjust. But speaking of adjustment here, as we do jump on board with our driver Stephen Donnelly, he's going to take us around for a flying lap of the Portimão Grand Prix circuit. So coming down towards turn of one as he does so, hard on the brakes, nice and early, 200 meters to corner apex, down to third gear, clips the apex perfectly, and down towards turn number two. Straight lines as much as possible, and then hard on the brakes, 100 meters to corner apex, down to first gear for the hairpin at 3. Keeping the car over to the right hand side here, blasting the throttle up to second gear, opens up the corner as much as possible as he turns in, shifts to third on the apex there to reduce the amount of rear wheel spin, and now down towards the hairpin at turn number 5 he goes. Looks to his right hand side for his brake marker, braking about 150 meters to corner apex, still descending down to first gear. Runs a little bit deep there by design to let the car roll out, and now up the hill he goes. Full throttle, and in fact Donny backs off. There he decides it's not right, and well, I believe he's going to tow to the pit lane for that. So Donny not happy about something, not quite sure what. Perhaps there's something wrong with the car that he's just noticed, but he's decided to abort that lap and wait to see what he does a bit later. But right now, well, we look forward to seeing how far he can go, because he's currently 21st or the 9th fastest of all your pro drivers. But let's come back to our championship leader in the elite class, and this is Lewis Kenyon. And Kenyon right now, well, it has definitely been one of those seasons where it's all looked right for him thus far. However, keeping the different circuits in mind, and here he's in the Porsche 992 today. Well, I get the feeling he'll be feeling as though this could be a great opportunity for him, given the Porsche does go quite strongly around here, particularly under a race pace. On a single lap, most of the cars are very equal. The Porsche does have that wonderful set of handling characteristics that make it a car that's very strong. And should we see wet weather, the Porsches are normally very strong in the wet, given the fact they're rear engine, rear wheel drive, and therefore can achieve a bit more traction over the rear end. But Kenyon right now, 16th place, but when you consider 7 tenths between himself and pole position, and the fact that right now, if he found a 10th, that would put him ahead of Emir Hessler and almost ahead of William Humphrey. Well, the key point being there, the fact the gaps in this qualifying session are incredibly close, and anybody can find time at any moment, and they may jump up several places, not just one. But as Kenyon makes his way towards the end of his current lap, coming in towards Galp Corner, well, meanwhile we come to Danny Van Oom, another driver who seems to have a bit of difficulty here for Relentless Racing in his Lamborghini Huracan, only 26th at the moment. And I do wonder whether a lot of drivers with the prospect of mixed conditions, and we should point out, by the way, that when we do mixed conditions at SimRacing International, there is no guarantee it is going to be wet necessarily, although I do believe we run timeline weather, whereby essentially we have said at some point rain is expected to potentially come. However, it is based on a probability curve where the probability will gradually increase or decrease or may stay the same. So therefore, the iRacing weather gods, if you will, can say, even if we set the weather to be 50% chance of rain all the way through the race, well, you flip that coin several times through the race, you may always come home with tails, and therefore we may never see that rain. So that's why I think what's happened perhaps for some drivers is in the practice they have gone to the circuit and gradually developed perhaps wet setups. There's been a lot of rain in the practice sessions conditions earlier this week. But here now in the dry, I think a few drivers have had to perhaps improvise some changes to the setup, and that's why we're seeing some big names a lot further down the order, plus also the different nature of the circuit always adds to the mix. But in terms of other surprises right now, in terms of drivers who are a long way down and where perhaps they should be, we look to David Hutchinson as he slides his way loose there, coming all the way down through 7 into 8, and Hutchinson going very loose and sideways. Well, the number 21 driver gets it together, but goodness me, that was continental drift there in that Ford Mustang as he tries to get out of the way, but all the field's coming on through, and that was the DC Motorsport machine making its way on through there of, I believe, none other than what was Peter Duke in the Corvette Z06. Managed to avoid him just about there, but a big slide loose for Hutchinson, and well, a bit of an error. But as we say hello to a few more of you in YouTube chat, including none other than what is Gail H, saying looking forward to this one, go altitude. And indeed, where's Reece Saunders at the moment, I hear you ask? Well, the answer is we're trying to find him on camera, and he is currently your second fastest of your pros. Well, he's definitely living up to the hype here, and the fact that he was expecting to go well here so far, and he is looking quite good. He's looking green, and well, right now it's not just because of the pro colour or the green on the car, it is the fact he is looking quick. And well, as he makes his way on around in the draft of BMW in front of him, that's going to be the BMW there of Jamie Bardwell that he's tackling into the toe, and he'll be grateful for that. But Saunders comes across the line and decides to pull off the racing line and back the car off there. So he's happy, but I think he'll feel as though there's more to be done in due order. Hayden Miller, meanwhile, under the radar, he's moved himself up into third place as Miller weaves his way around right now, and as he does so, well, it is looking quite positive for the 181 driver in the Corvette, and we do know this Corvette does have a lot of race pace potential in it, perhaps not the fastest one-lap pace potential, although he is 3/10 off a pole in third place right now, so he's putting a good qualifying lap, but I think his mindset will be in the fact that he might be able to deliver more even as we go on. But as he heads on down the round, well, meanwhile, in terms of some other surprises out there, we do see Kyle Roy is looking quite quick right now, the Miracle Group M Academy driver, and well, as he makes his way through the final corner, taking a lot of runoff area there, he gets away with that just about. Well, are we going to get an on-board lap with Roy? I think we are, ladies and gentlemen, so let's jump inside and see if we can complete a lap of the Portimão Grand Prix circuit, this time at the helm of your number 24 pro driver of Kyle Roy in his Corvette Z06. So down towards turn of 1, braking hard there, and as he does, going all the way down from 6th to 3rd gear, quickly upshifting to 4th at the apex, intriguingly, and now making his way through 2 and in towards 3, hard on the brakes once again, all the way down to 1st gear. Will it be a short shift to 2nd? Yes, it will. Now over to the right side immediately, and out to 3rd before he even turns into the corner. Right now, the gearing on this Corvette is so tight in the lower gears, and as he makes his way down in towards turn number 5, he's used that to his advantage as he goes hard on the brakes here, all the way down to 1st gear, exits the corner, gets the car to load up nicely, and now making his way all the way over towards turn number 7. Albeit he's got to go via turn 6, keeps it over to left on exits, that way he opens up the right-hander of 7, down to 4th gear, and lets the car flow down. Does he keep it in track limits? Just about, but getting a bit greedy there with the exit curve, and I think the car's starting to understeer a little bit there, offload out of turn 7, but right now for Roy, it's still been a smooth lap as he comes up the hill through 9 and in towards Portimão Bend at 10. As he goes onto the brakes, you'll notice braking nice and wide there at 10 to set up the approach to turn 11, and from 3rd gear he'll go full throttle now down the hill, over to the right to open up turn number 12 to shorten the amount of steering lock he has to apply, and then in towards 13, braking at the 100-metre line on the right-hand side, down to 1st gear for the first of 2 hairpins, back up to 2nd, now over to the left-hand side to open up turn number 14, from 3rd, back to 2nd gear again, not going to 1st this time because there's more speed at the apex here, as he makes his way out up to 3rd, and then ran a little bit wide, intentionally using all the road, 4th, then 5th, in towards Galp corner he goes, and here completely blindside as he turns in, but now flat out all the way to line for Roy, and what's it going to be this time as he crosses that timeline, and the answer is going to be, well, he's currently 9th, and he does not improve at all. So for Roy, that was not the smoothest of laps. I think he lost most of the time at what was turn number 7 into 8, where he had that understeer moment coming down through 7 into 8 and had to very quickly adjust the car. And that's been one of the themes of this Corvette. We've said it multiple times this season already, in the fact that this is a car that once you get to the corner apex and start to build up the exit, it really wants to understeer. It's a bit unconventional for a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, but if anyone did recently catch what was the Wet Icons video on YouTube on the official World Endurance Championship YouTube channel, what you'll know they are doing tours of all the cars that make up the grid, including the Corvette Z06, and the handling characteristics of this car, as modelled in iRacing, are actually very much like the real car in the fact that it naturally is actually very stable from the front to the rear, unlike most mid-engine rear drive cars, whereby because the weight is behind the driver, they normally do have a bias towards the rear coming around quite quickly. This Corvette, the way that Corvette have done the aero, it does mean that essentially it is a very balanced car, and therefore it gives the driver a lot of confidence, and it makes it a very approachable car for both rookie drivers all the way through to elite drivers, or what would be perhaps your diamond standard drivers in the real world motorsport driver classifications, where they go from bronze all the way through to, I believe it's platinum, not diamond. I should correct myself on that one. But either way, we're definitely seeing Kyle Roy demonstrate right now exactly how that Corvette is able to run very smoothly. But as we do say hello to a few others of you there, including Simax TV, who's cheering on Benedictus Sinkevicius, who right now is in second. He's trying to find a bit more time in that Lamborghini Huracan Evo to take on his teammate Oleg. Well, understand me, I think Vulkan Motorsports will be very happy to have their cars lock out the front three positions, and in the front row in particular, but ideally the individual drivers will all be wanting to be the #1 name in that group. But Ploeg in his Acura seems to have found some absolute magic to put himself on pole on that 40.822 that nobody seems to be able to match, at least at the moment. But we also see LTH Racing there saying we have a night shift tomorrow. Come on, let's go Benedictus for the win. And therefore, I can definitely tell he's got a lot of fans here today, which is great to see. But we've also got some huge fans there, Jordan B and also Soviet Seek, for what is none other than MTD and Beowulf Racing Team, respectively. And in terms of where Milton Tomlinson-Dennis is right now, well, here you can see him in the 192. And as the Mercedes AMG Evo drive makes his way along, I'll have the chance to catch up with him in the build-up to today. He was saying to me about the fact he was very happy with how things ended at Daytona. And many of you may remember how happy he sounded in his post-race interview. And, well, he was also mentioning to me the fact that he hasn't quite had the chance to do as much practice as he would have liked. And he does feel the mixed conditions, or the risk of rain, is going to throw a degree of jeopardy into the racing because of the fact, as we've said before, this Mercedes, it is very aggressive on its rear tyres with wheel spin in the lower gears. And that takes away the traction both in the dry and also in the wet. But he's hoping his abilities behind the wheel will make up for the fact the Mercedes may not be strong should we see the accursed wet weather. And, well, we look forward to seeing what he can do with it. But as he continues to come around on this qualifying session right now, currently the 5th fastest of everybody, with the pro of Wayne Douglas between himself and then the rest of his elite peers at the very top. And what about our Beowulf drivers? Well, here's one of them, Belay Kotonen, who is improving quite quickly right now. He's moved his way up to 12th off camera, and right now the number 39 driver, after the huge heroics we saw at Daytona in the first race, well, the major incident he was involved in race number 2 completely put a pin in what was all of his high and lofty enthusiasm. But right now I'm certain of the fact the Flying Finn has been able to essentially calm himself down, and indeed has readjusted himself and got himself right back mentally into the space he needs to be in order to potentially chase down the win in the race here. And of course it's very hard when that happens, because it was all looking so good for him in the state of Florida last week, and then suddenly it all went very backwards. But that's what happens in these series, and that's why they are 10 rounds and not a single round. You've got to be ready in the long haul and mentally ready for all of it. But meanwhile, we do say hello there to Jared Love, who says Wayne is absolutely flying. Of course, his DC Motorsport teammate there, with Jared Love not able to make it on the grid today. And well, we are gutted not to have you on the grid, Jared, as well as you being gutted to miss this one. But I do hope you're doing well, good sir, and we look forward to seeing you back on the grid in future rounds. But as we are missing your Ferrari, we do have, of course, the wonderful Corvette of none other than Peter Duke out there. And, well, right now he's currently in 9th in the pro class, and you can make a bit more progress. But it does seem as though this qualifying session is perhaps not giving time to drivers anymore. We haven't really seen anybody improve over the last 10 minutes. Everyone's chasing time here, but something tells me we may have lost a little bit of ambient temperature with the cloud layering coming over quite heavily. And in terms of our weather here at the moment, at least, it's very overcast, and well, we do have an ambient of 19 degrees centigrade and a track temperature of 25 degrees centigrade. So it's still a warm circuit by relative standards, albeit ideally a good circuit as well. If there was any question about finding lap time, suddenly the pole sitter has just raised the bar even more. Seb Ploeg has just crossed the line. He's just put in a 40.634. Well, I don't know where he's found that, ladies and gentlemen, but I can tell you one thing, he's not on camera. We've missed the lap, and indeed that's going to go down in history, much like the infamous what was pole lap set by Ayrton Senna at the Monaco Grand Prix of 1990, I believe, that was never caught on TV whatsoever. But we've caught on TV right now the fact that Peter Duke gets it wrong at turn number 1, and he goes slide into the grass. But that'll be a toe to the pits for him quite quickly, and he'll look to get it back together, but he's run out of time. That might be it for Duke. He may not be able to do any more here today. But meanwhile, all the way down in 41st place out of what is our 50 attendees here in Portugal, we do have Wesley Van Rens right now. making his way on through the final corner, and Van Rens, he's all the way down 41st place. He's going to be hoping for a bit more as he comes to that timeline. And what's it going to be here as he crosses the line? And the answer is going to be he improves to 42.313, but it's not too much time there. And right now for Van Rens, I would imagine that that's not moved him up at all, but he is finding a bit of pace. But a lot of drivers here do seem to be struggling. But in terms of those big names that we say, well, one of the big ones is none other than Fotis Katios. He's in 25th overall, or what is 12 in the pro class. But again, we always know that his race pace is much better than his qualifying pace, but surely at some point the split straight esports drivers have got to sit him down. Indeed, the whole team have got to sit their driver down and say to him, Fotis, you're great in the race, no doubt about it, but you can't win every race just by simply going through the field. There are limits to it, and I get the feeling that Fotis might not be listening to that too much. But to be fair, we can't blame him because he gives us plenty of entertainment. But if he can find a bit more qualifying pace as these rounds go on in this season, he's definitely going to be looking at making it more consistent wins. But again, this McLaren here at Portimão, whilst we do have a lot of direction changes, which are to the benefit of the McLaren, while the downside, of course, is the fact those rapid-fire direction changes are at lower speeds, which is a vulnerability of the McLaren. With all its aerodynamics, it's very good at medium to high speed direction changes, less so when you go to lower speeds by comparison, albeit the car is very pitch forward over the front end for a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, whereby it has a lot of instability intentionally over the rear. But right now Katios understanding the fact that things are not quite looking as bright as they did at Daytona, but then again he may just prove us differently when we do go to our grid for our 60-minute race. But in terms of other performances out there, Ime Hesselaar right now, as we see him making his way on through, well, right now the Heracles performance driver in 17th. Well, can he find a little bit more before this session is done and dusted? And the answer right now is no. However, he has demonstrated the fact that he is getting closer and closer to the top 10 in the elite class. And the fact he's only behind Jesper Svensson in the end by a grand total of 300ths of that. Svensson's currently parked up in the pit lane as Hesselaar right now completes his final lap shortly, making his way through turns 10 and 11. He will be allowed to complete this, of course, because this is a feature race round. Qualifying does have overtime rules in effect. It's the sprint race rounds where we don't have overtime or the 5-minute warm-up period. So there's a slight difference here that drivers have to get used to. And, well, of course, the third Ploeg, he had a bit of an error when he went to the grid last time out at Daytona, where in the end he did miss the fact that the grid, well, we had the warm-up session removed from that session, as is per the rule book, and therefore he thought we had the warm-up, and by the time he got back in the car, everyone had already got ready to go race him. So it's very gutting for the Vulkan Motorsports driver, but he still made a good redemptive drive of it. But meanwhile, as we see Hesselaar heading towards the time line, well, what's it going to be this time? And the answer is going to be for the Ferrari driver. It's not an improvement. But meanwhile, Jack Wyborn comes to line in his own Ferrari 296. He was 25th, and he jumps up to 18th, just behind Hesselaar. So in the end, a 41.563 is his lap time. A good effort there from Wyborn. He'll be very pleased with that, as we've still got a couple more drivers yet to finish their final qualifying laps. But right now, the lowest place driver of them all is Lorenzo Corretto, who's down in 50th place, the 31st of our 31 pro drivers here today. And that's definitely a bit of a shock there for Corretto, because he is a sizable gap down, albeit the car currently parked up in the pit lane. He's behind Matthew Bacon. They're going to be on your final row of what will be a 25-row grid or 50-car order. And meanwhile, as we see Katios here wind his way towards the end, and Matthew Jordan doing the same here in the all-yellow Ferrari. Well, these drivers still trying to find some time out there, and, well, that time is not forthcoming as Wesley Van Rens crosses the line. Doesn't improve, a 42.268 that time versus previous best of 41.987. It has not been a lap that's given him any time back. Matthew Jordan, the privateer in the 86, he makes his way on through, and as he comes on through the corner, well, Ashley Coupland off camera has jumped up to 8th on a 41.242, so he's found a couple of attempts. Well done to him. He's got himself right behind Brandon Dyer by a 10th, and, well, by 100th, I should say. And meanwhile, here comes Matthew Jordan across that line, and in the end, it's only going to be 39th. He does not improve, and, well, that is really going to bookend qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. Qualifying is complete, and on pole position here today, it is going to be Seb Ploeg over on in elite. And meanwhile, in the pro class, we will be seeing Wayne Douglas take 5th place overall, but with it, class pole position. The best part of 4 places ahead of 2nd place man Rhys Saunders, will start 9th, and the term separated by the elites of Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, Brandon Dyer and Ashley Coupland. And, well, Kyle Roy will join Rhys Saunders on the 5th row of the grid to complete the top 10 overall and make it the top 3 of the pro class. But the biggest surprise of them all in the fact that we have had some big names qualify further down the order, particularly in the pro class, and Stephen Donnelly, the man who looked incredibly quick in practice earlier this week. He was only able to achieve 24th place overall, 10th in the pro class, with Robin Noel Brown and Fotis Katios directly behind him. Danny Van as well, all the way down in 27th place in the company of Ryan Nickerson, who starts 28th. So those two elite drivers have had a difficult qualifying session. And as for even further down the field, Max Wheeler in his Audi R8 Evo 2, 46th was the best he could achieve overall. That is not a happy story there for Wheeler, no doubt about it. But as we do see a bit of sunshine coming over the circuit for now, well, still all waiting to see whether there's going to be any rain at all here for our drivers. Well, we do make our way into our 5-minute warm-up session. And right now, everybody getting themselves set as Seb Blowing makes his way out of the pit lane. Well, I think for this man right now, given the fact he's taken pole position, the Vulkan Motorsports one driver will be thinking one thing and one thing only to himself, and that is, how high can I now go in this race? Can I just run away and lead it all? Or will it be another story like the Sachsenring, where he has to be innovative and he won't be able to break away from the field? Or will the Sachsenring a very different style of circuit, where overtaking was relegated to certain points on the lap? Here, meanwhile, well, overtaking much more viable, as you can see how wide the track is. And of course, there are certain parts of the lap where overtakes are much easier to make. For example, at the hairpin here at turn number 5, and also the run, let's say, all the way in towards turn number 8, should you be able to go too wide. But also, it is the case that in the more tighter sections of the lap, such as at turns 10 and 11, you can still force overtakes if you're feeling confident. And that's why this Portimão circuit is absolutely loved. But right now, a driver who we've loved seeing out on the circuit all the way through this season thus far, albeit he has got the front bumper back on the car for InterRacing team in his Aston Martin Evo Vantage V8. It's none other than Schubert Cardozo, who's in the pro class and the number 7 driver here today. I had a great chat with him coming out of Daytona, not in the interview room, but in what was the post-race debriefing room. And we were saying about the fact, because his car was so identifiable without his front bumper, he jokingly said, what if we were to run it without the front bumper for the whole season? And to which I said to Schubert, well, it definitely be identifiable, but we'd like to see him have that front bumper on the car, so that way he has got the pace over the races. Because, of course, when you do lose a front bumper, you pick up a lot of aerodynamic drag, and also you do risk damage to the front end radiator and the air cooling to the engine, and that will only hurt engine performance over time. But the Britain right now, looking forward to going racing, no doubt about it, as are all of our drivers. Harry Shaw as well, not having the easiest qualifying session for Iron Apex Esports. However, Lamborghini Huracan driver, he has proven, much like Fotis Katios, he's a much faster driver in the race trim than he is in qualifying trim. He has this habit, and I've seen it over multiple seasons, whereby he is a relatively quick driver by default, otherwise he wouldn't be in your pro class, but he has this knack, it seems, when he gets into the race, suddenly, wherever he was on pace in qualifying, put a line for it, he suddenly finds the time. He's very good at chasing drivers, and he can put a lot of mental pressure on his rivals simply by the fact that as he watches them and gets closer and closer to them, he just seems to absorb lap time off of them. It's a crazy approach, but to be fair, it works for Britain, and that's what makes him so ferociously fast the deeper you go into a race, and we saw that in his pursuit of Katios. The only reason he couldn't catch Katios in the end of Daytona in race 2 was because of the elite traffic that got between them. Katios was very good at essentially picking up, metaphorically speaking, an elite driver and just popping them directly behind him and saying, right, you're going to act as my rear guard. Harry, good luck. You've got to now make your way past another car again. And it seemed every time Shaw got close, another elite driver would come between the two of them, but not necessarily today. But Shaw knows he's going to be chasing after a completely different name at the top of Wayne Douglas here. And, well, the DC Motorsport driver really qualifying well, no doubt about it, the 5th place overall. Next up, meanwhile, he's one of the fan favourites, the Dutchman here for Vulkan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing. Incredibly quick last season, of course. And, well, just missed out, unfortunately, to the championship crown of what was none other than your pro class in what's that incredible season-long battle with his Access and Sport rivals. But in the end, he was able to make some magic happen, no doubt about it, with some brilliant drives, albeit going from his Mercedes to the Ford Mustang for this season. But he has kept with the theme of a V8, albeit decided to go from 6.3 litres of one down to 5 litres, but I don't think he'll be too upset about that. Both still naturally aspirated. Site entities out there, and in terms of his qualifying performance, not the strongest either for the UK SimRacing Hamilton driver. And in the end, whilst it wasn't one of note necessarily, the Porsche 911 driver, I think he's just very happy to be on the grid. And well, I can tell you one thing about Cy the Welshman, a lovely person in person. I've had the pleasure of meeting him on a couple of occasions, but also he's one of those drivers who I think here today he can finally switch his mind off, because he's done a lot of admin work for series, both the UKSR GT3 series that's now been amalgamated into SimRacing International on Sundays, and also of course, he's helped run that here at SimRacing International and also has helped work behind the scenes. But for this season, Site Anti has just put up what has been his admin jacket and said, all I want to do is drive, and who can blame at the end of the day? And well, he's definitely been enjoying the racing thus far, no doubt about it. As he makes his way down, Liam Fraser there as well, and we can always rely on the Englishman for Moonshiners Racing Club. He's always got a smile on his face, and I'll tell you one thing right now, the Fraser family, well, they are a huge fan of sim racers, and the Moonshiners Racing Club team are a huge fan of their machinery, whether it be BMWs or Mercedes. And William Fraser, whilst he may not have caught the spotlight in qualifying, we look forward to seeing what he can do when we do go green flag in only a moment's time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, with the clock coming to 0, well, it's time to make our way to the grid for our one and only feature race here at the Portimão Circuit for round number 3 of Split A's Season 11 Thursday GT3 Championship, brought to you by SimRacing International. And so as they all make the way to the grid, this is how they'll line up for round number 3 of the championship. And as we can see, Sir Ploeg takes pole position here for Vulkan Motorsports 1 by an absolutely monstrous 3.5 tenths over his teammate of Benedictus Sinkevicius. It's an all Vulkan front row, and then behind him on the second row, it is going to be Hayden Miller for Vulkan Motorsports 2, ahead and in the company of none other than his teammate of Lewis Kenyon. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 for the team, and then we will see behind them, well, it's going to be the combination pair of Wayne Douglas, the pro pole sitter for DC Motorsport Privateers, ahead of Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, MTD, for World of Racing, with SDR Racing, the 192 driver here. We'll be hoping he can get involved on those front 2 rows as quickly as possible. If not, then we'll see behind him none other than what will be Brandon Dyer for the Inter Racing team, ahead of Ashley Coulton, starts 8th place for Relentless Racing, and then it will be an all-pro road to complete your top 10 of Rhys Saunders for Altitude 3M Esports and Kyle Roy for Miracle Group M Academy. Behind them, starting on row at number 6, it's going to be Menno Blom, who takes his best qualifying performance of the season in the sim racing team at Lowland Corvette, head of Vele Katonen for Beowulf Racing Team. The thing could only manage 5th place in class today, but keep your eyes out for him in his Porsche, he'll be quick over the race. Thomas Pugh lines up behind him, 13th for Axis Sport X, head of Vulkan Fasters by Glass Tech's William Humphrey, and he seemingly struggled a little bit towards the tail end of qualifying, but we know that Aston Martin's very good on the brakes, as is its driver, and therefore he'll be looking to make progress early, and it is a much stronger strategy car than it is a one-lap pace car. In 15th, we've got Nick Stubb for Vulkan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing, ahead of none other than Jesper Svensson. The Heracles Performance driver 16th, just ahead of Ime Hasselaar. A late improvement from both drivers in qualifying, but the biggest improver of the group there was none other than Jack Wybon, who starts 18th for MRC 495. Then completing your top 20, it's going to be Sim Coach's Team Modi, ahead of what is Schubert Godolzo there for Inter Racing Team, taking his best qualifying points of the season with 7th place in the Pro class. Outside the top 20, it's Mark Hutchinson, who starts in 21st for Altitude 3M Esports, head of Site Anthony there for UK Sim Racing Hamilton, and then it will be Peter Duke for DC Motorsport and JST Euro Racing Stephen Donnelly, who complete your Pro top 10 with the first 12 rows. On row 13, we've got Robin Noel Brown starting 25th for GPEX SimSport Xenon, ahead of Split Track Esports' Fotis Katios, and then we do have Danny Van Urma in 27th place for Relentless Racing, ahead of Ryan Nickerson for Split Track Esports, and your top 30 is completed there by Mark Barber for Quaintmass Motorsport, and none other than Nathan Anstis for UK Sim Racing Norris. Outside the top 30, 31st is Harry Shaw for Iron Apex Esports, his weakest qualifying points so far this season, but don't undermine him and don't count him out of this one. He's got Mark DeVries for Close Company for Sim Racing Team Lowlands. Then on row number 17, it's Liam Fraser for Moonshiners Racing Club, ahead of Tom Weston, and then from the DC Motorsport driver, it will be James Howard, who starts 35th for Dexterous Motorsport Zemix, head 9 Pegasus Panther Racing's Wesley Van Rens. 37th is Mikey Story for Dexterous Motorsports Kumar, ahead of LS Racing's Adam Baker, and completing that top 40, it is going to be Matthew Jordan, the privateer, ahead of Danny Phillips, who starts 40th for Dexterous Motorsports Kumar. Outside the top 40, on row number 21, it's Samuel Clark, 41st for Dexterous Motorsport Zemix, head of Axis Simsport X's, I should say. Let me get my letters correct, and that's going to be David Hutchison. And then we do have Phoenix Racing Reds, Jamie Bardwell, qualifying only 43rd today in what is a challenging qualifying session for the BMW driver, head of none other than what will be the machinery of Ross Young for Dexterous Motorsports Zemix. Then we do have Ashley Brooks starting 45th for Axis in Sports Y. Head of Phoenix for Racing Blues, Max Wheelo starts all the way down the back of the field in the elite class. Head of Mark Johnson, who starts 47th for Axis in Sport Y. And then we will have alongside him on the penultimate row of the grid, Danny Cilliers for Sim Coach. And on the final row of the grid, to complete your 50 drivers, it is going to be Matthew Bacon for Sim Coach behind his teammate, but ahead of Virtual Racing Teams, Lorenzo Gohetto. Well, the Italian completes our 50 starters, and as Mike Barber has chosen to start from the pit lane, ladies and gentlemen, well, we look back to the very front of the field. We are not too far away from going green flag racing as this formation lap is gradually heading towards its conclusion. But as it does so there, well, we've got some liveries that decide not to load, some that decide to load on the cars, and we do apologise for that. But what we don't apologise for is what's going to be the epic racing that's about to get underway here at what will be the Portimão Grand Prix circuit. And well, for whom exactly in the region of Algarve will it work out fine, and for who will they find that the race may not go their way? Well, it's the Sir Ploeg to take us away for 60 minutes of racing here in Portugal. And it's lights out, and away we go for our third round of the championship as our drivers roar their way down towards turn 1. The clock ticks down, 60 minutes gets going as they roar their way down the hill. We can see the play being flanked by Sinkevicius and Miller, and meanwhile behind, everyone scatters out. It's 4 wide at the apex there. Elbows out immediately. Reece Saunders on the attack. So there is Menno Blum and Brandon Dye. They all go absolutely hammer and tongs on each other. Into the braking zone for the hairpin they come. We'll have an instant for Matthew Jordan further back, but 3 wide at the apex there. Thomas Pugh trying to sneak from the inside, and up the hill they come there, and Pugh now finds himself on the outside. Kyle Roll comes back at him, but over the crest they come. Jack Wyborn and Nick Stubb, they're fighting 3 wide here, and also you do have none other than Ime Hesselar trying to go around the outside of the pair of them. He gets it done as they split around him again. Wyborn now hard on the brakes here, coming down to the braking zone, and all the cars queue up behind. But as they do, well, it's going to be the big concertina here. We had a car go round in front, a car go round again, and that's Mark Hutchinson. Hutchinson goes for a spin in his Ford Mustang in the elite class, and the Altitude Freedom Esports drive goes all the way to the back of the field as they all make the way past him. And for Hutchinson right now, it's been a frustrating start to the race. He's got to try and get himself back together. But meanwhile, at the front of the field, where it's an absolute flying start from Sir Ploeg, who is running away ahead of Hayden Miller, with Benedict and Sinkevicius in third, and then Milton Tomlinson-Dennis right now has come through with them, and Lewis Kenyon falling back slightly. So right now the top 4 of what was all Vulkan Motorsports drive has been interrupted by the World of Racing STR Esports machinery, but right now the Mercedes driver knows he's got to pick them off one by one before he gets to the final boss. Reece Saunders further back, well, he's had an absolute lightning start. Wayne Douglas has fallen back a little bit. He's dropped back to 8th place. Saunders is into the lead of the Pro Class at the moment, but Douglas, to be fair, for DC Motorsport, we're thinking to himself right now, he's got to just gradually build that momentum. Further back, Ashley Cootant here battling for Relentless Racing and looking on the inside there of Jack Wyborn. And right now the Relentless Racing driver tucking in right into the draft there. Can't find a way through at the moment, but Wyborn's had an incredible start to this race. He's already up from what was 19th place, with our 18th place, let me correct myself, up to 13th. Wyborn is flying in that Ferrari, and as they come across that timeline right now, well, it's not over yet, this battle, because you can see Kyle Roy having to go defensive, as William Humphrey's going to try and look around the inside of him here, and it's going to taper very quickly towards an apex, but Humphrey dives up the inside on the brakes, and Humphrey there makes a classic move for what is 15th place. So Humphrey on a mission right now as he comes on through. All the drivers starting on the dry tyre, should be pointed out, as Francis Katios. He dives up the inside of Roy, and Katios already has gained what's been 9 places, but Roy comes back in here and says, no you don't. Car goes round in the rear, that's Svensson. Svensson goes for a spin. Oh, goodness me, there's another car round. That was the Relentless Racing machine of Danny Van Oom. That rolls back onto the road. Oh my good lord! James Howarth goes straight into the stricken Lamborghini that rolls onto the road, and both cars are in pieces. And well, Van Oom goes up, round and around. My good lord, I've not seen a car go spinning like that ever since Giovanni Tarquini, Gabriel Tarquini, all the way back at Knock Hill in 1993. But meanwhile, as we come back to all the racing right now, well, I can tell you one thing, it's been up, down, and around for several drivers, but meanwhile, not so for Samuel Clark, who's just made steady progress. We'll get a replay of what happened there between Howarth and Woods Van Oom shortly. Both drivers in separate instants, and it all came together. Well, we've still got plenty more fighting going on, and as Clark makes his way up the hill for Dexterous Motorsports Zemex, well, right now we can see the number 23 driver here with all the progress he's making at the moment, qualifying low down the order may not have been a bad thing. And indeed, that's been one of the stories of many a driver in the Pro Class, and the fact where they've started has not represented where they finished, where they qualify all the way down towards the back of the very front. But Ross Young here also for Dexterous Motorsports Zemex. I think he has a smile on his face right now, the fact he's kept his places at the start, as Matthew Jordan there looking on the inside of Adam Baker. Both of these two have had a very slow start to this race. They have not made any progress at all. They've both lost 3 places in class and a place overall. Coming down through turn number 14 right now, Jordan stays behind, and with the all-yellow Ferrari machine, while the classic Ferrari colours can't find its way past the Mercedes of Adam Baker as they make the way towards the end of this lap. But after what has been 2 laps of racing, we do have Sarah Ploeg, your leader right now, as he heads all the way up in towards turn number 4, ahead of Hayden Miller, and it's Benedictus Sinkevicius in third, ahead of Milton Tomlinson-Dennis. Then we've got a further 1.3 seconds back to Lewis Kenyon in 5th, with Brandon Dyer, meanwhile, in 6th place at the moment. The Inter-Racing Team driver, who's had a bit of a steady start to this one, he'll be happy with that. And then we do have Wayne Douglas, who right now leading in the Pro Class. He's got back ahead in the Pro Class here for DC Motorsport Privateers. He's had a good start. He's got back ahead of Reece Saunders. We'll get a replay of that overtake shortly, with Saunders behind him in 8th, second of the Pros, ahead of Menno Bloem, who completes your top 3 of Pro drivers. And Bloem right now, my goodness, the SimRacing Team Lowlands driver. Well, many of you may remember, of course, this was the circuit that all the way back in Season 10 was the site of perhaps one of their darkest days in this series, where it all went wrong between multiple drivers, where they were all fighting for position and end up in contact. But right now for Menno Bloem, he's definitely having a much more positive day today, and he's trying to exercise the demons of what has been Portimão, as Thomas Pugh, meanwhile, rounds up your top 10 there, your elite driver, who is a bit away from his countryman in the further run up the field, we should say his classman. But he has got a comfortable gap of 2.3 seconds at least now over William Humphrey, but Humphrey is going some, it should be said. And right now, excluding your top 5, William Humphrey is the fastest driver on circuit by a considerable margin. So Vulkan fastest by Glass Tip Racing driver may just yet be getting more involved. But meanwhile, speaking of involvement here, as a slight anti trying to go around the outside of the Ferrari of Hesselaar, the Heracles performance driver right now from the Netherlands, finds himself in a very tight line into Gout corner. That's not easy to negotiate as he comes on through. And we look back from the rear of the 1-2-1 here, and you see Anti so close that he can take the camera off the car, and in fact he almost does so there as they drag race their way down the start-finish straight. The Porsche driver comes out the toe, only to find out in the end that Hesselaar still has the toe of the guys in front of him. But as they get ready to battle into turn 1, Anti's not going to take no for an answer here. He goes up the inside on the brakes. The Porsche's got the brakes to do this, and the Heracles performance driver in the end lets it go to go for the switchback here into turn number 3. It's side by side on the braking again. Brilliant battling between these two. They may be at different classes right now, but they're putting on the class act, no doubt about it. And Anthony now has a problem behind him. That's Robin Noel Brown, who's looking one way then the other. And the GPX Sinsport Xenon driver now thinks, okay, if they're all going to keep fighting right in front of me, why don't I get involved as well? So looks down to the inside then as they all come onto the brakes. Well, we can see Stephen Donnelly there also looking to get involved, as me or Ryan Nickerson. He's going to try and figure a way into this one, no doubt about it. Albeit all these drivers now queuing up, and this goes to show you a little bit of fighting can cost you time, but also it can cost you momentum on the guy in front and put you at risk of the guy behind. That's what Anthony's now found with that move into turn 1, which was a fair move to be fair, trying to take the place of Hesselaar in order to put an elite driver between himself and his pro peers. Well, now he's got a pro pack right all over the back of him, but Hesselaar is struggling here in these medium speed corners. He's not comfortable on those exits, and Anthony looks up the inside again. He goes for it here, and Anthony right now really chomping at the bit. You can understand why he wants to clear this Ferrari. He feels as though that Ferrari 296 is just holding him back, but as they make the way into the rise of turn 13, Anthony on the outside, me or Noel Brown tries to look up the inside. Hesselaar breaks both of them there, and Anthony right now pushing incredibly hard for this move. And well, I do wonder here where he's putting himself at risk of burning the tyres down a little bit too soon, as just in front, Nick Stubb and Fortis Gatios start to go side by side, coming out 14. The battle begins between these two, and well, understandably something tells me that in terms of that battle right now, it's going to be a bit of contact. There it is, and well, Stubb goes out slightly wide, and Gatios there maintains his position on the inside, tries not to gain from it as a result, as they all make the way on down the start for this straight. And well, it's now going to be a drag race here. The McLaren on the inside, it hasn't quite got the straight line pace of the Mustang eventually, but he's going to go all in. Here's Gatios, and he'll get ahead of Stubb there, and here comes Hesselaar. He sees the doors open, but the door is firmly shut in his face, and well, Nick Stubb there being very rude in terms of shutting the door, but to be fair, Hesselaar says to him, okay, well, how about this? I wasn't asking to come through the door. And so he lunged up the inside. I think Stubb realising that he perhaps did shut the door a bit too firmly, and well, now comes Cy Anthony, who says, can I come in and play? And I think at this point Stubb's pretty much now looking to the outside of the circuit, thinking, sure, okay, this is not a good point in the race for me. And well, the Ford Mustang driver loses another place, and here comes Stephen Donnelly now, and suddenly Nick Stubb, who really was just ahead of this and just trying to keep it together. One little battle with Fortis Gatios through turn number 15, and now Stubb is being robbed to places left, right and centre. Although he goes defensive versus Donnelly, the Irishman cuts back. And the JSD racing car right now can't seem to find a way through, and indeed it's secure. Mustang's now building because you've got Robin Noel Brown and then Brian Nickerson, albeit he's a McLaren. Then you've got Harry Shaw's Lamborghini to run that order, and Peter Duke's right at the group here in his Corvette, wondering how he can potentially become a playing factor in this. But from there, we need to talk about the front of the field, meanwhile, as we have had a change of what is your leader, and well, it's Hayden Miller ahead of Sarah Ploeg. Ploeg did have a bit of a slowdown that he had to serve towards the start of the race. Well, no, in fact, towards the start of the race, Ploeg had to serve it on the previous lap, and I wonder wonder whether that's enabled the two of them to swap places. But Miller right now is getting into a bit of an element of his own. But as the first 10 minutes of this race come to a halt, well, meanwhile, we now take a look back in time, ladies and gentlemen, as to how the race started. So this was your race start, and as they all made the way away, well, we look a little bit further back in the order here to Fotis Katios' race start, as he went green flag, and well, we're going to see him make up a lot of place he normally does here in the medley, and this is what it's like when you're in the mid-pack here between all the drivers. And as he made his way down towards turn 1, didn't quite get the launch down on Stephen Donnelly, so where exactly did he start to get the time? Well, the answer is going to be, as they all concertina together, found some space in the middle of the road, so he's going to look up the inside Donnelly into turn number 2, look to the inside even more, you can see where he's positioned the car, and immediately dives up the inside there. My good lord, that's brave, that's calculated, and that's Fotis Katios in his element. He saw a space, and the Greek driver simply went, right, I'm going to take that. If nobody else is going to take it, I'm going to reserve my spot in that. And where he wanted to go around the outside there, the 132 Mustang of Mark Hutchinson, but in the end, he's all over the back of the Porsche, the 189, and well, went up the inside of the pair of them again, and got it stopped because everybody concertinaed in the middle of the road, and Fotis Katios in the end, my good lord, I don't know how the man has this confidence to do it, but he does so anyway, and he makes the magic absolutely happen. And well, that was requested there by none other than what is Jared Love to see exactly how Katios fights his way through the field, and now you have your answer. Meanwhile, this was Matthew Jordan's start of the race, a bit of a crowded one, and took a lot of apex curve at one, rear right tyre clipped it, and it sent the car around, so a frustrating start for Matthew Jordan, no doubt about it. We had this meanwhile for James Howarth, and this was Harrow's opening run of corners with Extras Motorsport Zemeckis in the Mercedes, side by side with his teammate there at the apex of 2, went onto the brakes and well had to really stop the car there. I think that's because Liam Fraser got caught up and caused a bit of a concertina with Samuel Clark and also Jamie Bardwell. But it gets worse now for James Howarth as he comes up the hill through turn number 4, and what he's not going to see is a Lamborghini that's about to roll in from the right side of your screen, and well, as he makes his way down, in fact it wasn't this lap, it was the next one that happened. I do apologise, but we also did see what was a bit of a concertina down at turn number 5, and what happened to Mark Hutchinson in all of this? Well, we ride on board the nose here of the Altitude Frame Esports drivers. He made his way down to that braking zone. 3 wide at the apex. Haslar goes a bit deep, and as Hutchinson comes on through, tries to get the power down, and he got tapped there. The Altitude Frame Esports car got turned around at that point, hold the brakes, and pray that nobody cuts to your inside line. In fact, he let the car roll slightly there. That was a tactical decision to let it roll backwards away from the racing line, and we could have put the brakes on at any time there to stop it rolling. So Hutchinson playing it as safe as humanly possible. We then had, what was this for Mark Johnson? This was lap number 2. This was into turn number 1. The Access Sport wide driver here fighting 2 wide versus, well, no, that was not with Max Wheeler. That was Johnson behind. Wheeler was fighting somebody else, and Johnson just went completely on around. And yes, for Svensson, meanwhile, this went wrong for him. This was coming out of turn number 3 in towards 4. This is where it all went wrong for several drivers. With Svensson made his way through the corner, took a lot of apex curve, and the rear of the car lifted up and around, rolled backwards across the road. And then you're going to see for Danny Van Umet also goes very wrong, but you won't see what else happens. Thankfully, we do have an alternative angle of this as he made his way over the rise. Same mistake as Svensson. Went out wide, rear Lamborghini let go, and as he goes, the barrier car starts to roll backwards, and at this point, he has the brakes on, and James Howard just comes charging through, does not expect the Lamborghini to be there, and it just rolls and rolls and rolls. And then we had this for Nick Stubb on lap number 3, only moments later, and well, for the Vulkan Motorsports by Glass Step Racing driver, battling hard with Jack Wyborn, under braking, and it's a tap there by looks things to the rear of the car from Wyborn. It sent Stubb sideways, and that brought him right into the thick of the fighting here. But as to how Hayden Miller took the lead of the race, meanwhile, your last big question mark, well, this was down the start finish straight, and Ploeg here as he made his way down, I think serving a slowdown penalty at what was the exit of the final corner, he picked it up, and well, in the end, that's how Hayden Miller took the lead. So back to your live racing we come, and we come back to it in good time, ladies and gentlemen, because there's still plenty to come. And well, we did see what was Milton Tomlinson-Dennis looking for a move on Benedictus Sinkevicius. And as we come to it, as we see a spin there for Sinkevicius, going slightly on around there, coming through turn number 5. So Sinkevicius struggling a little bit on rear tyre life at the moment, it would seem. And we'll get it back together for now. But the point is, hold up, are we seeing some rain on the circuit? I'm seeing contrails coming off the back of the car, small spray contrails. I think we've had a little bit of rain whilst we've been looking at the replays. And is that thunder I'm seeing in the background as well? A slight flash there of what's the camera screen. And well, if so, we just might be seeing a very light amount of rain. I can't see it on the cameras at the moment. I'm sure some of you might be able to tell me if I'm missing something or not, but right now I can't see rain, but some rain has slightly fallen on the circuit, and this might be a sign of what is to come here at Portimão, because we can see very, very small spray marks come off the back of the car. We're purely in dry conditions at the moment, but understandably, with a little bit of water on the circuit, it may just be taking those grip levels down. But as all these drivers coming through, well, right now we do say hello there to GB Laki, and who says, I can only think about you can't park there, sir, regards to that huge incident between what was Danny Van Ulmer and also James Howarth. And also we do say hello there to Sakura556, who's cheering on none other than Samuel Clark. We'll give you an update on him shortly. But right now, let's stay Trans 6 to Brandon Dyer, who looks one way than the other. And Lewis Kenyon in the end, I don't think he's got anywhere else he can really go on the road, Kenyon. I don't think he feels he's got the grip in the car as they make their way down towards turn number 1. The purple lights coming on the cars there. And as they make onto the braking zone, Dyer right now definitely feeling a bit more confident here. And this might be where we suddenly see some drivers who really struggled in qualifying. Perhaps they didn't have setups that were made to run well in the dry. Suddenly you might see some drivers here really come to life in terms of pace. But we've got cars into the pit lane. We've got Donnelly, we've got Shaw, we've got Noel Brown, we've got Story and Pugh all in. I expect that is to go to what is the wet tyre. We will bring up the tyre compounds on screen for you, ladies and gentlemen, so you can see who exactly is running what at the moment. Everyone's on slicks, and they all started on slicks, but the rain has come, and it's come quite early into the race here, only 15 minutes in. So is it an opportunity to come in for your pit stop? Well, that's going to be a tough call for our drivers. Going to have to think about exactly where they fit into this. But Donnelly has gone on to wet tyres. Also, we have had Noel Brown, Shaw, Pugh and Story. They've all gone to wet. So have Adam Baker, Samuel Clark. And, well, there is Adam Baker, and here's Clark behind him. And right now, the Dexterous Motorsports Zemex driver, who found himself in the thick of the fighting in the early stages, well, he's decided to pick, go to the wet, and this is for strategy reasons. But I'm not seeing any rain falling on the cameras at the moment, unless our cameraman have found a way to make it so you can't see rainfall, or it's just that fine. Perhaps it is a very fine drizzle. But either way, Clark right now in his 23. Well, on those wet tyres, the gamble that he's taken here, as have many of the drivers, is that if the rain does not start to properly fall, these wet tyres, they will destroy them before they can really use them, because they're overheating the tyre the longer they're driving on a circuit that is effectively dry. And well, hold up a second, that is a destruction of two places there. Nothing about the wet tyre. That's Mark Johnson and Lorenzo Gorjetto coming together by looks of things. They've had a bit of an altercation at turns 8 and upwards, I do suspect, and we might get a replay of that very shortly, what's happened to them. But both drivers right now trying to get it back together, and well, they've lost a few places, no doubt about it. And in fact, can we get a quick replay of it? Yes, we can. Now, this was Gorjetto under pressure from Johnson at the time, making his way down to turn number 7. As he did so, well, he was all right there. Johnson got close, and Gorjetto lost the rear of the car. Johnson tried to take a race of action around the outside, and well, then our camera decides to glitch out slightly, and that's exactly what happened for Gorjetto. A small bit of contact, and suddenly, well, the virtual racing team driving the Access Sport X driver, both having a tiny touch, but to be fair, they'll both get away with that one. I think that's quite an innocent mistake. But back to your live racing we come, and as we do, Mark Johnson right now making his way across that timeline, trying to recover into this race. He passes Matthew Jordan, who is also on the slick tyre alongside him. And well, there's the rain. It is starting to fall down at turn number 1. So we are starting to see our first proper raindrops here. What was drizzle is now becoming light rain as Johnson goes wide there, and that rain's only going to hurt all these drivers more and more. Those on the slick tyre right now, they are going to struggle around here, and well, they'll very quickly find they probably need to come into the pits. But this will now be a bit of a race of survival as well. Can you stay on that slick tyre until we really do see rain? As the headlights go on, those are the wet weather headlights that are going on these cars right now, and that means that we are starting to traverse into slightly wet conditions on the track surface. So everybody thinking to themselves, when's the right time to come in? Because nobody wants to come in until they're absolutely certain they want to go on sat tyre, because they come in and they need to go back to the dry tyre. It's an extra pit stop they may not need to have made. But I can see in the Vulkan Motorsports garage that the team are getting ready. So are they at World of Racing with STR Esports, as we do have Tomlinson-Dennis up into second ahead of Sir Bloeg. But all your top 5 are in. I think everyone's stuck in, but not William Humphrey. He's going to take the gamble here as Humphrey. He stays out for another lap. Now, is this costly? Well, Some would say yes, some would say no. The reason you would say no is because we're not having rain universally falling all over the circuit at the moment, so his tyre temperatures, they will be able to stay relatively hot. He will have enough heat in the slick compound to essentially be able to try and boil away the water that's going over the tyre. Plus, the lack of standing water at the moment means that the slick tyre is not at risk of aquaplaning, where it hits a puddle and in the end it can't displace the water, so it just sits on top of the water and slides away or runs on a plane of water, hence the term aquaplaning from the Latin of water to be aqua. But as he makes his way down in towards turn number 5, right now for William Humphrey, this is a lap about survival here, but the game plan is if he can just go a bit deeper, he gives himself choice, he gives himself more options, and that's why Nick Stubbs stayed out, that's why Wesley Van Renzen stayed out, the same for Jamie Bardwell, Mark Hutchinson. They all think they can just go a little bit longer here. They may lose time on this lap, but it may come back to them later on in the race. It is going to be very, very tight between all of them, no doubt about it, as we look back to Reece Saunders. Now, as the drivers all coming through, well, we also have had a request with regards to the live standings of what is this race. So I'm at Jagger Racing, and you can see the live standings using this link that we have just popped into the YouTube chat. So hopefully that's going to be a benefit to you, and you'll get a lot more data than what you see here on our timing tower. But as all the drivers head on through, well, right now, definitely this is proving to be a race where it is going to be all about have you made the right call to come onto the wet tyres or not. As Ryan Nicholson makes his way close behind Jack Wybe on all these drivers now on the wet tyre here, and they'll all be hoping that wet tyre is going to reward them quite comfortably. As meanwhile, we've had a couple of drivers go wide. Wesley Van Renzen is really struggling at the moment. Those who stayed out on the slick, so one extra lap, they are tiptoeing around. Where's Mark Hutchinson gone? Well, he's falling down the order here like a stone as Tomlinson-Dennis goes around the outside of him, and Hutchinson is struggling. They've gone one lap too long in the end. The rain has come on even stronger. Where's William Humphrey? Humphrey runs all the way down through Gap Corner. As he does so, well, the Vulkan fastest by Glass Step Racing Drive, he's put one more lap on the board, but the time he's going to lose on this lap. Is he peeling into the pits? The answer is yes, he is. Nick Stubbs coming in, but not that way as he goes sideways. And Stubbs in the end stops it from going around, but right now he's trying to get to the pits as Wesley Van Renzen is not too far behind him either. They're struggling to get in. Jamie Bardwell, he's also had a big slide loose at turn number 15. They're all struggling to make the way on through right now as he comes on down the hill, and as he does, there's Hayden Miller, and behind him it's going to be none Seb Ploeg who's going to go around the outside. And suddenly these are your leaders once again, and Miller, whilst he was leading slightly comfortably only months ago, well, the Vulkan Motorsports 2 driver right now is going to be passed potentially by the Vulkan Motorsports 1 driver as Ploeg looking up the inside here, and now we're starting to really see Ploeg come to an element of his own. Goes up the inside and makes that move stick quickly. But understandably, the two teammates here, they will be jostling just as much for fun as they will be for the idea of being number one here, because they need to make sure they maintain these tyres and also keep themselves safe for the rest of the race. But from them, what's happening further down the order? Well, have there been any big gains? Have there been any big surprises beyond our drivers who went one lap too many, including William Humphrey? Well, Team Muldy has now made his way back into 26th, where he started, and back into 13th, finally, exactly where he started. But he's under pressure from Iman Hesselaar, who's going to look up the inside here as they make the way through turn number 15 to wide they exit the corner, but it's going to be a drag race all the way down towards turn number 1, and well, the Ferrari will gradually outpace the Porsche. You can see there Danny Phillips doing his best ability to share the slipstream to the two cars. Out of the pits come a couple of drivers, and as they all tiptoe the way out, this is going to make it a very crowded turn 1 into 2. That's Wesley Van Renzen there, who finds Liam Fraser going around his outside. Van Renzen has just gone onto the wet tyre, and everyone's trying to go around the outside. The 9 Pegasus Pan for a racing driver who's just trying to get some heat into those wet tyres at the moment. He's got no ability to fight right now. If he tries to fight, he's going to come sliding loose, and then he lets all the places go. So Van Renzen, this has been costly for, as it has for David Hutchinson, who had what was his big off track as he tried to make his way around. And the Exodus for X-Driver right now, well, you can definitely tell one thing, and that is this has not been a race that's quite come his way. But then again, there could be more twists and turns here, because remember, we've had some rainfall, the circuit has got moist, but notice the fact we are not seeing rain continuously fall, and that in itself, well, we then do have the question mark. Do you then come in again potentially to go back to the slick? Do you stay out on a wet tyre and hope the rain then comes back later on in the race? Of course, all of our teams out there, all of our drivers, have strategists on the wall, keeping an eye on the weather, looking out from underneath their canopies, and also the weather radars, as we do see Tom Weston up the inside there of Mikey Story, but Story gets the better exit coming out to turn number 8. They're fighting over 15th place in the Pro class, bearing in mind, of course, the top 30 of Pro get points, and it is the top, 15 of Elite that get points as well. Slightly different point structure for this season to respect the numbers on the grid, but everyone is fighting in positions right now, knowing there are plenty of points to potentially go around. Looking from there and back to one of the fan favourites there, as Miguel Riva says, go Ime, in reference to Ime Hessler. He finds himself still fighting with a pair of pros around as he tries to go around the outside of both Liam Fraser and Nick Stubb. I think he's going to get this, to be fair. I think he's found the grip on that Ferrari. Now he's starting to move forward. So I think the Dutchman came here today with one setup on the car, and that was a wet setup the team had dialed in early this week. And now the rain has arrived. They'll be praying that rain stays here. But meanwhile, oh, what's this? Beowulf Racing Team's Villa Katonen. Who's that with him? Is that William Humphrey? It's Humphrey. He's into the barrier turn one. Have they had to come in together? I'm not quite sure, but Humphrey's rolling backwards. He's not happy in that car. His race may just be over, and I think Katonen's been involved in that potentially. As at the inside of Villa Katonen goes Nathan Anstis. All the drama begins here, and the UK SimRacing Nordschleife right now is picking up the places quickly. He's gained 15 since the start, and he's gained 7 in class. But as he makes his way onwards towards what will be turn number 5, Menno Bloom's his next target, 3 seconds up the road. But right now for Anstis, this is already looking to be a flyer of a race, no doubt about it. But we come back in time then to what exactly happened to William Humphrey after we see the conclusion here of Steve Donnelly trying to find a way past Villa Katonen in towards turn 6. That's not happening. As the sun comes out, he looks to the inside of 7. That's still not happening, but he's trying to put Katonen under mental pressure. That is happening as they make the way up the hill of 8 now. And you can see Katonen left, right and centre of the road here, and all out of salt. I think he's just trying to get himself calmed back down. It's not easy to do. Well, let's take a look back at what exactly happened and what might have unsettled him. So this was down the start-finish straight. You saw Katios there fighting in the foreground, and meanwhile, Humphrey on the inside versus... Oh, no! That's disastrous there. Katonen, the rear left tyre just onto the white line of the curb. He went onto the brakes, and that tyre had no grip on it, and William Humphrey was an innocent bystander in that on his inside. This was the on-board for Katonen, and let's just listen in. You'll hear it when it comes loose. And there it just went completely, just by touching the white line with his rear right tyre under braking for Katonen. A completely innocent error, but such a disastrous one in the wet. Those white lines, those curbs, they become the danger zones. They offer you no grip in the dry, and they offer you absolutely negative grip in the wet. And that's what happened. I'm sure there'll be a conversation between the two of them after the race, but for Villa Katonen there, well, there was nothing else he could do. And for William Humphrey, you've got to feel for the man right now, because that is bad luck. Absolutely defined. But meanwhile, as we come back to your live race, and there is still more to unfold, no doubt about it. We've unfortunately had Sam Clark had to tow to the pitch due to an incident. We'll try and get your story on that very shortly. As we do see other drivers right now carrying through. Well, this weather is proving to be very indecisive here right now. We've got patches of rain, then it stops, and then it comes. It's not consistent around the circuit either. The wet tyre was the right course. That's Wayne Douglas going wide. The man who was your pole sitter in pro, he's gone deep at turn 5. He loses out to Reece Saunders, who now takes second in the pro class of him. And Fotis Katios in all of this has crept into the lead of the pros as a result of it all. The split track esports driver right now, well, he fought his way past a load of drivers on the open lap in the dry, and in the wet right now the McLaren driver is absolutely trying to charge away. But then again, now that Reece Saunders has been unleashed onto the well, could the GT3 esports driver be able to find his way through as well? There's all those questions as Hayden Miller meanwhile dropped a bit further down. He's lost out to Plague and also to Tomlinson-Dennis. And in fact, we've suddenly had a huge gap open up at the very front of it. Ploeg has opened up a lead of 12 seconds. That's completely unnatural for the Vulkan Motorsports driver. Not saying he's got unnatural powers, to be fair. He's very quick, but Miller has had a long drop down the field. And, well, we'll try and understand what's happened very shortly, because Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, he's moved up to second place, and he was the best part of 6 seconds behind what was Ploeg and Miller when they were fighting for the lead after the wet stop pit stop. So I wonder exactly how exactly the 192 drivers found his way through it, or perhaps the bigger story is where exactly Hayden Miller has fallen off the road, because there he is at long last in the Vulkan Motorsports 2 car. But this is a surprise and not a welcome one to be certain. We've got so many questions for you guys and girls in the YouTube chat. What's happened to driver A to driver B? And we'll try to fill you in as quickly as we can. And we're going to start off what exactly has happened to Hayden Miller, as we have a bit of a glitch to our time tail there of Ashley Cooper jumping up to the top, but I believe that's just a row area, as we do see Miller going very deep there into turn 5, but that's by design. That's the racing line now in these wet conditions, and Lewis Kenyon is trying to catch up to him. But without further ado, this is what happened to Miller to send him down the order. So Plagan left him behind, coming out 14 into 15. Miller made his way through 15. Oh my goodness, the rear of the car completely snapping loose there and just rolling him way out to the gravel. And the Vulkan Motorsports 2 driver in the end not getting stuck in the gravel, able to get the throttle back in and able to ride the gravel there where it's so slick and wet and gradually make his way back on. But that would have been nerve-wracking coming back on because it is a long curb and he tried to leave it as late as possible for the rejoin to make sure he didn't run over the white line, or at least a very shallow angle there, so that way he had the minimum amount of steering lock. Well done to Miller for recovering that, but definitely not an easy moment for him whatsoever. But as he made his way back together, we then had this happen for Samuel Clark, and well, ladies and gentlemen, it's not gone quite the way Samuel Clark's wanted it to. That's the gravel at turn number 8, but how did he get there is the question we need an answer to. I think this is your answer. So this was coming over the rise of 6 in towards 7, chasing after Max Wheeler in the Audi. Came on down through 7 and went a little bit deep. Oh my good lord, there were 2 cars parts there already. That was Harry Smith and also the Mercedes there of Danny Cilliers just parked up. I think they've both been involved in their own altercation of some description, but Cilliers in the end would have gone sideways, and here's an earlier replay of that, so we didn't catch this. This was Cilliers coming on down. As he made his way into the corner, Shaw had already gone around, I believe, and Cilliers just lost it of his own accord. And, well, Shaw had lost it of his own accord as well. And then suddenly, that explains what happened to Samuel Clark, taking the race action to the inside, but Cilliers' car just rolled enough, and Clark did not have enough time to try and pull to the inside there. I didn't think the yellow flags came out in time, to be fair. They wouldn't have at that rate or not, so therefore that explains the story. But we've had offs left, right and centre, but we come back to your live racing, and everyone right now definitely trying to keep it together in these treacherous conditions, and it might be worth any of these drivers just under-driving by the best part of 10 to 20% in order to try and not make any more errors. Not saying they are making errors by design, but I think right now those who are able just to avoid making mistakes, they may suddenly make up tons of places here because the mistake threshold is incredibly high. As Harry Shaw, he's braving it out on those exit curves at turn number 14 and will turn 13 and 15, but as he makes his way on through, right now Shaw is pushing on. He wants to try and get those places back that he's lost with his spin. But from them, we then come all the way back to Katios, who right now is under pressure from Saunders. So one moment, Katios was leading comfortably, and now here's Saunders, and there's contact between the two of them. Katios can't get the traction as they make their way out the crest. Here's all the spray off the back of the car there. It's like putting on a fog over what is Rhys Saunders' car, but we can assure you it's there. And as they make the way through, Rhys Saunders looking around the outside here. Can he go for the move? He tries to, but Katios puts it on the inside. He takes a lot of apex curve. And right now, Saunders, by going so deep, is going to lose out at least for now. But the lead of the Pro class is definitely under a huge amount of contention. And Wayne Douglas, who is 6 seconds back, I think he'd love to be a part of this, but he's got his own challenges with Stephen Donnelly that you see in the rear of the picture. And our cameraman looks over to him now. There is Douglas under pressure from Donnelly with Emma Hesselar, the Ferrari driver in the elite class, who looked absolutely was ponderous in the dry. Sonny's come alive in the wet, but Donnelly goes around the outside of Douglas there, and suddenly the DC Motorsport Privateer falls back in the 4th in Pro. But now, will we see Hasselhoff go up the inside? Yes, he will. He dives up immediately there and says, I'm taking that one as well, thank you very much. Hasselhoff has got other ideas here. He's trying to chase down the top 5 in the class today, and he may very well much get it at this rate. But it's all coming through. In terms of what happened in the pit lane, we can tell you that everyone's practically had an identical stop, and I suspect every car was fueled up as much as possible, and they've all put 4 wet tyres on. So therefore, strategy now is going to be very interesting because of when it happened in terms of the transition. As Douglas goes a bit deep there at Gout Corner, that car's going to get scooped out. He's going to rejoin. As meanwhile, as Menno Blom. Blom goes wide as well. They both go to the runoff area. This is going to be so hazardous coming back on. As you can see, Tim Modic immediately pulling over as much as humanly possible. That's to cool the tyres and the patches, but also to make sure he gives space to the man who needs to rejoin. But down towards turn 1 they come, and right now Nathan Anstis is up in a 4th in the Pro class with Nick Stubb right behind him. And well, these drivers all push each other onwards as much as possible, but these battles, they are building here, and we're starting to see several drivers who were equipped for the wet, not for the dry. They're all coming through. Anstis and Stubb are 2 of them. Also, Stephen Donnelly's absolutely flying now, and I think the prediction that Rhys Saunders was telling us about in the practice sessions earlier this week is starting to come true. As soon as the rain has come out, this man from Ireland for JSD Racing is suddenly finding all the pace out there, and Ime Hesselar the same. But as these drivers all continue to try and hold it together as much as possible, well, what's happening further down the order? We've had a little bit of change. Benedictus Sinkevicius has now been passed by Jack Wyborn, I believe. Wyborn has scooped his way past in the Ferrari, and they've got a lap down Mustang between the two of them. That is the Mustang of David Hutchison, and we'll think of Vicious right now just not having a race to be remembered. He had what was a bit of an error early on, I do believe, and off track, and in fact he's had another one quite recently. As we've got black flags as well for Nick Stubb and also for Robin Noel Brown. That'll be for instant points, I suspect, for off tracks and contacts that have happened. So Sonny, they have drive-through penalties they're going to have to serve when 3 laps are being awarded, and well, that is a big question mark on this race, because keeping in mind with the fact that drivers might be slipping and sliding off the circuit, every time they do so it is at least a 1x or 1 instant point. It can be 2 if they lose control of the car, and if they make contact with another driver it becomes 4, and suddenly, well, the amount of instant points that are available, those 18, they will be consumed very quickly over laps and the time we've got left. We've just gone over halfway point of this race, and well, strategy's a question mark. Can everybody get to the end on the fuel tanks they've got? Or do they potentially need to do a lot of fuel saving to guarantee that, given the fact that when they're driving in the wet they will be using less fuel as standard, so they won't be accelerating for as long or as for hard. But right now there are so many question marks in this race, and the rain has definitely come at the perfect time to put this race on an absolute knife edge strategy wise. And well, as Nick Stubb makes his way into the pit lane, he will release Wayne Douglas back into 5th place in the Pro class, and the Douglas Motorsport driver for DC Motorsport makes his way down into turn of 1. Now he's bringing Menno Bloem with him, but indeed as well he is bringing Schubert Cardozo, and Cardozo right now enjoying his best performance of the season so far, 7th in the Pro class in the number 7 car, quite poetic. But behind him, well, he does have Wesley Van Rens, who's just made his way out and back onto the road, and well, these drivers right now, in fact that was not Van Rens coming out the pit lane, I do apologise, that was none other than Tom Weston making his way out after his recent incident where he's had to come into the pits due to damage on the car. But Cardozo, the key point being here, he does seem to be very happy at the moment, and well, this is definitely an upturn from Daytona last time out. But from there we come to Max Wheeler, and Wheeler battling with Si Anthony, the Phoenix Racing Blue driver. Well, looks up the inside here in the Audi, and can he get it done? The answer is yes, no, maybe. We don't need to repeat the question because he has got it done down to turn number 3, and oh, that's a big dive coming in from Mark Hutchinson there, and well, he wasn't quite close enough to try and make the move happen, but Hutchinson definitely thought about it. As we ride on board here with the Altitude 3M esports driver, and well, he's definitely enjoying himself, no doubt. He is really going now, and I think ever since the start of the race, with what was the spin at turn number 5 on the opening lap, which sent him all the way back down the order, and so Anthony there goes absolutely blazing hot on the inside of Wheeler. They survive it, give each other space. So Anthony right now enjoying battling here. Hutchinson thinks he's got all the pace he can use to pass both of them. Well, looks around the outside at 6. Does he go for the inside into 7? No, the standing water there prevents him from doing so. You can see it all puddling up on the inside of the corner, and now looking towards the inside of 8. The water flying down the hill, but it'll be too wide up their eyes as they come through the right hand in towards turn number 9, and so Anthony trying to peg them both back here, but Wheeler right now fending off Hutchinson, and Anthony hoping he can force the Audi driver to battle more with the Ford rather than with himself. But Anthony goes as defensive as humanly possible. Wheeler tries to turn him. He can't cut it back, he can't get it around the outside. Anthony goes deep on that inside line. They survive it or thereabouts, but Max Wheeler had to be very wary of where that Porsche was, otherwise it could have ended up in tears. But it's getting very close between these two as Hutchinson squeezes around the outside. Looking now into turn 13. This is going to be for elite position for 13th place in class. Wheeler on that inside, I don't think he's going to have enough traction in that Audi, and Mark Hutchinson will take the place for now at least. But can he hold it coming down through 14? He lets the car run a little bit deep, and that's to make sure they can get some traction on the outside of the circuit, and Hutchinson does take the place. A brilliant battling between these 3, and now looking around the outside here at Gout Corner, he tries to carry all the speed. Anthony doesn't wash out there, and Mark Hutchinson just finds all the grip on the outside, and he takes the place as well. Mark Hutchinson there definitely demonstrating right now why he could be nicknamed the Weatherman here, because right now he's absolutely clued into the weather as they make the way down towards turn number 1. Anthony looking back to the inside, he can't quite find the return pace, neither can Max Wheeler, so Mark Hutchinson in the end does clear 2 very committed drivers and clears them in absolutely brilliant driving. But from then we've had a change further up the road. We have had Hayden Miller get back ahead of Lewis Kenyon, the Vulkan Motorsports 2 driver, ahead of his teammate now, as Kenyon finds himself having to gradually negotiate his way to get a lap on Lorenzo Gorjetto, and behind them, well, you've got an 11-second gap to Brandon Dyer. Indeed, they're fighting their way through a bit of traffic at the moment, and as he comes on down the hill, well, there's another bit of drama, because here's Fotis Katios. He's just recovered from a spin at turn number 8, and alongside him for 3rd place in the Pro class, that's Nathan Anstis trying to go around the outside of him. In fact, that was at turns 10 and 11, let me correct myself, and Katios immediately tries to dive back on the inside. but a big slide loose there at the apex of 13. Katios right now for all the grit and determination. The car's not offering the grip as we've got a black flag for Wayne Douglas now as well. Douglas has gone over the instant point limit, and he now has a drive-through penalty that he's going to have to serve in 3 laps. So it's going to put Douglas all the way down the order. Semeno blown behind him will suddenly return to the top 5 of the Pro class here. You couldn't make this up right now. The Pro class is absolutely tossing and turning as if it's rolling out of bed. But at this point right now, well, I can tell you one thing, it's not in bed, it's not asleep, it's very much alive. As we do see Katios trying to come back at Anstis, but right at this point, it does not seem as though he's got the pace. That split straight esports McLaren. And as this circuit has got wetter and wetter, there was a natural biting point, I think, where with a very light wet circuit or a lightly damp circuit, Fotis Katios had all the pace in the car, and then suddenly, as the rain has increased, the car has gone from being a very good place to a bit of a rough place. But not so for Ime Hesselar as he tries to take on Team Modig now, the sim coach driver in his Porsche 189, well, as he makes his way on towards what we turn number 5. Hesselar trying to go around the outside here, and this is going to be now for 9th place in the elite class. Hesselar absolutely on a mission here to pick up places as we ride on board the dashboard of the Heracles performance driver as he comes on out. Well, where exactly is the grip? And the answer is it's on the inside as much as the outside there, and well, Hesselar finding a clear track in front of him, but not a clear run versus Modig, who is digging in deep. Hesselar goes a bit deep himself under braking. He just taps the rear of what's Modig's car, but Modig does not feel it. Hesselar definitely does, and he goes wide, he washes out, but he comes back together. Takes a very inventive racing line there for turn 7-8. I think you could call that the NASCAR line if we're racing at Kota, but as they make the way up the hill right now, Hesselar is not losing any of his determination. I can imagine that smile you see in his profile picture right now. The grin's going to be absolutely big on his face as Katios looks up the inside of Anstis. He tries to come back here, and Katios right now, he's adjusted for the conditions. Anstis meanwhile will not budge. He will not give him as a small tap between them, but he has to on that inside line. There's no grip then. Katios returns to 3rd in Pro. My goodness, right now this race is constantly oscillating back and forth in the Pro class and towards the bottom end of the top 10 in the elite class. And as before, you consider that Brandon Dyer's now under pressure. Here comes Sinkevicius, who's going to look up the inside of him, down towards turn 1. Lewis Kenyon is 12 seconds up the road here, and Dyer tries to make sure that Sinkevicius can't get him up the inside, but the Lamborghini driver is all there as they're coming towards turn number 2, and Dyer's going to have to let this go at some point. I don't think he's going to have an answer to it unless he can switch it back to the inside of 4, and the answer is if he does, well, he's going to have to grip there. He's going to go for it there, and in the end, they've still got a bit of an overlap here. So the InterRacing team driver right now is not backing off, but he does in the end as he makes way down towards turn number 5. And Dyer right now, well, will he go all on the brakes here? Will it be a dive into the swim pool, the hairpin? And the answer is no. He will wait as Sinkevicius does finally get that move back. And well, Sinkevicius' race has gone from good to bad and back to recovering because he fell all the way from 2nd in the elite class down to what was 7th at one point. He's now back into 5th, and he's targeting chasing down his teammates Lewis Kenyon and Hayden Miller next. But at the very front of the field, here's the man for Vulkan Motorsports 1, who right now, well, he's absolutely running rampant at the front of the field. It is none other than Sir Pleweg as he makes his way down the start-finish straight, passing there none other than Sight Anthony for UK SimRacing Hamilton, who steps aside, who has a lap put on him. Pleweg right now is almost 30 seconds clear of Milton Tomlinson-Dennis. That is the gap he has opened, and Tomlinson-Dennis right now, well, he's in a very comfortable 2nd place, 9 seconds ahead of Hayden Miller, but the World Racing STR Esports driver here I don't think has an answer as he makes his way over the crest. But as we do say hello there to Matt Watkins at 95, and also I do believe to none other than what is Matt's Hard 12, who says nice Imme in reference to Hesselar's driving. Well, all these drivers right now, they're definitely still driving to the limit. We've still got 20 minutes this race to go, and well, the rain keeps coming and going away. The forecast right now is very mixed, it's very uncertain. But if we do see a sun stop to the rain and the circuit starts to dry, this race may suddenly take a very different look on it. But we will see, as meanwhile we come back to see the ongoing battle here between Anstis and Katios for 3rd place in Pro. And with these two still going at it, the gap between the two of them absolutely negligible. And how Anstis can see into turn 15 is beyond me, ladies and gentlemen. I think he's doing that using muscle memory rather than being able to do it through eyesight, because the spray off the back of the McLaren in front of him is absolutely horrendous as Anstis washes out onto the exit curb in there. He keeps it together just about, but he'll have no ability now to really siphon the toe of Katios coming down towards turn number 1 as he heads up towards top gear here in the UK SimRacing Norris machine. Onto the brakes he goes, and well, you can see Katios there now 1 second ahead, but both drivers pushing hard, and Anstis trying to get his way back into this one, but it's a lot easier said than done at this point. And he'll be hoping that perhaps Katios will come up behind Tim Modig and won't be able to find his way past the Sim Coach Porsche as easily. over the rise of turn number 4, and Katios, in fact, a big slide loose there coming out the corner. So right now, Katios may be caught back up in this battle before we know it, as we do look to the class standings down the left-hand side of your picture for a moment, with everyone having served a pit stop to change tyres and most likely try to put the fuel in to get to the end of the race. But as Katios runs deep at the hairpin, Anstis right now looking much more composed here, and he seems to be a little bit more respectful perhaps of the conditions, whereas Katios does seem to be a little bit more trigger happy on the brakes and into these zones. But it's two very different styles of driving, to be fair, but it is leading to an absolutely brilliant battle between these two, where you do have Katios trying to hold on. Meanwhile, further back in the Pro class, we do have the battle between Adam Baker and Jamie Bardwell. Baker just got ahead into turn 1, and as they come down in towards turn number 3, Bardwell right now in the BMW M4, looking back up the inside, but Baker says to him, no you don't. Bardwell right now is going to have to wait a little bit, as then they do have behind them the car Mark De Vries that is a lap down at the moment and won't be too worried about it. They'll be just looking to try and pull away from the all-yellow Corvette. Albeit we do know De Vries has got quite a bit of pace in that Corvette here in the wet, so he might be trying to unlap himself. He may become a bit of an actor in this one. Now, along the way, we have lost a few drivers in this race, unfortunately, and in terms of retirees so far, we have lost James Howarth, also Harry Shaw, Mark Johnson, Liam Fraser, Tom Weston, Kyle Roy, Matthew Jordan. They're all pro drivers, and we've also lost Ashley Coupland and William Humphrey, and of course Humphrey being lost in that huge shunt at turn number 1 with Villa Katonen, when the wet weather caught Katonen out on what was the entry curbing by the smallest of margins. But we have lost what has been a grand total of 10 of our drivers so far. In fact, we also need to add to that list Samuel Clark and Danny Van Oom. Van Oom, of course, being lost on lap number 2 after what was the car rolling up and down the air, and I get the feeling he's been taken to the virtual medical centre. But meanwhile, Samuel Clark, well, he lost out on lap 13 when it all went very backwards for him. And indeed, right now, those we lost, commiserations too. But if your 40 runner's still out there, well, we've still got a race that is to be decided here, and these mixed conditions are definitely keeping everyone on their toes. Oh, hold up a second, that's Dexterous Motorsports Class Danny Phillips. What on earth has happened there on the start finish straight? He's gone straight along, and well, suddenly Nick Stubbs banned in here with Schubert Cardozo and gets up past number 7 Aston Martin, and now Nick Stubb is up into 7th place for Pro. There's a story there to be found, and well, we'll get a replay of it when we can, but definitely a big moment there for Danny Phillips. That's put him out of this race effectively for the time being, and Cardozo is now trying to come back here as they head up the rise. Wesley Van Rensen is second behind. Cardozo right now as we ride on board the dashboard here of the Inter Racing Team Aston Martin number 7. Well, he'll want that 7th place back as quickly as he can. But Stubb is on a bit of a mission to come back through the field here after what was an early incident as the wet weather arrived on the scene, and we'll try to go that extra lap, of course, and try to survive those conditions just a little bit longer than everybody else. And those who went on to lap number 11 before they decided to come into the pit lane to change to the wet tyre, they're the ones who lost out the most. They gambled thinking the rain was going to be spotty enough to be able to go 1 or 2 more laps, perhaps to give them more comfort on the fuel tank, and it wasn't the right call. And as Cardozo there tries to break into turn 8, you can see all that water that is coming down off of the hill, it's just causing the inside of the corner to be so slippery. They're aquaplaning on the inside, but on the outside, and on many of these corners, it's the outside now where there's a dry line. But of course, then you've got to try and drive a corner which goes against the way that you think as a driver, which is you want to go from outside to inside. So from the outside of the corner and entry to the inside of the apex, and then back to the outside. Whereas here right now, what they're having to do, they're having to drive the entire outside of many of these corners, because they essentially bowl in towards the apex curve, and that's where all the water is puddling up. And those who can adjust that as quickly as possible and know where that water is puddling, they're the ones who are going to gain the race time. And that's why you're seeing Stubb now just pulling away here as we do leave the onboard with Cardozo, because whilst Cardozo is doing everything he can, Stubb meanwhile has just found where all the water is, and he knows where it's not, and he's absolutely able to maximise his abilities in that Mustang. But as they make the way around to another lap, they come back to the point where we saw it all go wrong only moments ago for Danny Phillips, and here's the replay to explain exactly why it went wrong. Now, this was Phillips for Dexterous Motorsports car coming out of the final corner. Oh, no, that's not good at all. Goes wide there. Car gets collected by what was the curb and goes all the way to inside, hits the tyre barrier right on the pit lane entry, and thankfully does not collect what was Schubert Cardozo there. And this was the on-board from Cardozo's perspective. You'll see Phillips suddenly ping off to the right, and now Cardozo will hold his line, and suddenly here comes the car straight across the road, and Cardozo in the end, well, he had to either put the brakes on or go full throttle. He lifted and scooped the car to left in the end. It was enough for the Inter-Racing Team driver, but then suddenly there goes Nick Stubb past him, and Stubb in the end further back was able to capitalise on the situation, whereas Cardozo did the right thing, which was survive. That could have been an absolutely horrendous incident down the start-finish straight. It was not, thank goodness for that, but indeed it could have been a nightmare between them. And the InterRacing team driver right now, well, he'll be absolutely breathing a big sigh of relief for that one. But there's even more to come as we come back to the lead battle in the Pro class. They are still fighting here, and it's Donnelly versus Saunders. And well, Donnelly has caught up over the last couple of laps. He's going to try and go around the outside here at Gout Corner. This is brave, and in the end, Saunders backs off 9. Too wide through there is going to be an absolute detriment to both. And once he makes one through, can Saunders come back at this point? Donnelly has caught up very quickly over the last couple of laps, but he's had to wait for some time. And now he's finally found his way there. But as they make the way down the start-finish straight, we can see Saunders is not backing off here. He's coming back very quickly in the toe, and that might be a bit of a story of the setup of these cars, where perhaps Saunders is running a little bit less rear wing, which will give him all the speed on the straights, plus the draft. However, in the corners, particularly in the wet, that's going to cost him a bit of time, because the rear end of the car is going to be a lot more snappy by comparison. But, as you can see, both drivers there making their way out on turn number 3 at 2 Ford Mustangs right now. 2 ponies, if you will, absolutely chomping at the bit to go race it even more, but they can't get the throttles down that easily. And Ryan Nickerson is on the back of them by a second, and they're over the back of Jack Wyborn. And well, credit where it's due to Jack Wyborn. He has absolutely put together a huge effort. Donnelly goes deep, but does he get it wrong? No, not quite. He just about keeps it together. And meanwhile, Ryan Nickerson is watching this from behind. So it is the Pro filling an elite sandwich, and these 4 drivers, they're all trying to survive. But the lead battle of the Pro class here is what we will absolutely transfix to as they roar their way into the second half of this lap. We've still got 12.5 minutes to go. The time in this race has absolutely flown by, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you agree. And ever since that rain has arrived, this race has gone from what was already looking to be an absolute blockbuster into absolute cinema. And well, if they don't get an Oscar for this one, I don't know what will. But as they make the way through turns 10 and 11, well, Saunders cannot get alongside Donnelly at the moment. He is having to wait. But meanwhile, Ime Hesselar, he is closing quite quickly as well. He is 1.5 seconds faster than Ryan Nickerson on the last couple of laps. Each lap he's been taking at least a second, if not 1.5 seconds. So Hesselar right now is going to be a driver we need to keep an eye on, because he is looking very quick, and that pace is building as we do take a look at the lap times for the Dutchman. And well, what you can see right now versus Tim Modig 2 seconds a lap slower, well, 1.5 on average. But you flip it around the other way if we can show you the other way of the laps, and in fact we can show you here. Well, in fact, no, we can't unfortunately show you the other way round, but it's a similar complexion. But meanwhile, as Hesselar makes his way on through, the Heracles Performance driver from Netherlands doing everything right at the moment as, ooh, hold up a second, there's a lot of change of foot here, as we have seen. Ryan Nickerson gets past Reece Saunders. Meanwhile, Stephen Donnelly up the inside here. Wyborn, that's a gamble from Stephen. You don't need to do that. Going on the inside into turn 1, not on the pit exit line as well. And Wyborn cuts it back there. But right now, Stephen Donnelly, he is taking every risk here in the Haribo machine. And, well, victory tastes sweeter, I suspect, with Haribo, but it doesn't taste that sweet if he gets it wrong. But right now, Stephen Donnelly thinks he can pass Wyborn. I think he feels as though he can chase down Brandon Dyer at this rate. But the GT3 Racing driver wants to get on past what is Wyborn, so he can put more cars between himself and Saunders. He doesn't want Ryan Nickerson getting close to him. It's understandable, but I think right now that risk versus the reward, well, he seems to think it's worth the risk. I'm not sure if that reward is going to be as much as he thinks it is. But meanwhile, whilst that's happening, oh, down the start finish straight, and Schubert Cardozo, he's gone round at the corner where he almost got taken out of the race. What was that instant earlier on? But he's brought it back together. And will the InterRacing team number 7 still going at the moment, albeit he's lost a lot of place. He's dropped down to 10th place in Pro Class right now as Mike Barber is going to try and unlap himself. Albeit Cardozo here just trying to keep it together, and Barber getting closer to him as they make the way into 2 and 3. And right now, well, I think Cardozo here is just trying to get himself firmly re-established as to where he is on the circuit and where the water is. But meanwhile, whilst all this has been going on, we had this happen for Benedictus Sinkevicius only what was a few laps ago. So this was the Vulkan Motorsports driver at the time making his way down into turn 7, and well, he was in 5th place overall in the elite class, and in the end slid sideways into turn number 8 and mounted the curb, and that's what drops him all the way down to 14th place. And he's had that spin, and then he had to make his way into the pit lane, I believe, with what has been potentially some damage to the car. I don't know the full story on that one, but back to your live pictures we come. So that's why Sinkevicius has suddenly fallen a long way down in this race, ladies and gentlemen. He's had it go wrong, and we had this only months ago for Schubert Cardozo, the man we caught on the start for the straight. So this was down through the final corner, and as he made his way on around, well, he made the same mistake as what Danny Phillips did, albeit it wasn't as severe, bounced off the wall, albeit cars made the way through. Oh my good lord, and so blowing down to react at last possible moment, grinding along the barrier there, your race leader. And Cardozo, to be fair, I think at that point he either held his brakes and just simply acted as what was a blind landmine in the middle of the road, or he tried to do the right thing, which was get the car to the inside. But at that point of everyone else coming through, he was damned if he did, he was damned if he didn't. And I think the stewards after that one, well, they'll look at that and think, well, there was nothing else Schubert could have done at that point other than just prayed, to be honest. But as we make our way back to live pictures, thank goodness nobody got caught up in that, and thank goodness Cardozo's Kenyon was able to safely make it out of the way, because that was right after the blind summit coming out of turn 15. There's no way anyone would have been able to deal with that, even with the relative box that you have in iRacing, where you can see how close the car is in front of you. Nobody would have been able to see where Cardozo was at that point. It is blind up that hill, and with the spray as well of the cars in front, it would have been even worse. But thankfully it didn't end up in tears, and we are back to your live racing. And as we are, well, we've now got just under 10 minutes to go, and all the fighting is still building, because Cy Anti and Wayne Douglas, what two different stories these two have had. Douglas on the left of your picture was your pole sitter in Pro, 5th overall, and it's gone backwards in this race, and Anti right now is just trying to salvage some places. And as they come through 1 into 2, well, Douglas right now finding that Anthony making the move around the outside there, but Douglas tries to beat him under braking into turn 3. That's not going to happen as the rain comes back once again here. The circuit was starting to dry a little bit perhaps, and suddenly the rain gods have simply said, no, it's not going to. And these two fighting once more. As further back, Robin Noel Brown, he's on the back of Matthew Bacon here as they head up the rise in towards turns 13 and 14. And as he does, well, the fighting definitely for the lower positions in the pro class is building. But meanwhile, we've had a bit of a moment here. That's Lewis Kenyon. Hayden Miller's gone off at turn number 3. Comes back off the Vulkan Motorsports 2. But Miller's now lost third place again. A mistake has happened, and the Scotsman right now, we'll be hoping for a podium here, but he's got to fight Lewis Kenyon for it all the way to the finish here. A small mistake. He's just got deep at 3 from what we're to understand. And well, thankfully, nothing too grotesque with regards to it going wrong. But Fotis Katios is into the pit lane. He's picked up a black flag. I wonder if that's for track limits or is it for speeding in the pit lane? Well, hopefully it's not the latter, because he's going to have to come around again and do it once more. And I think the speeding in the pit lane actually is a stop and go penalty, not just a drive-through penalty, as he makes his way on down. But we still do have the question mark, of course. Are drivers going to be able to get to the end? Do they need to come in for fuel? If they do need to come in for fuel, it's got to be a quick splash and dash at that, as we do still have 39 cars running this race, and Katios has passed his pit box, but it's a drive-through penalty he's serving, so that will clear the black flag most likely. As here comes Tilliers looking at the inside of Guajeto. Can he get it done? Not quite yet. They fight over 18th, and Guajeto's going to have that inside line at turn number 4. That's going to be risky, but Cilliers takes the exit curb as well. Both drivers there respect each other, but also having to respect the limits of the surface. And well, they both find enough grip in the end to keep the battle going, and Cilliers does get that 19th place back in the pro class. But understandably, Guajeto right there behind him, looking left, looking right, but in the end he can't continue the fight. From there, meanwhile, the battle to not be the last of your runners here right now. It's Peter Duke versus Mark De Vries, with the fact they do have the interloper there of Milton Tomlinson-Dennis trying to put a lap on the both of them, and he slots himself in between the two Corvette drivers right now. And given how it's looking at the start of the race of both of them to be this far back now, well, understandably it has not clicked together, and there'll be a day to learn from both of them. As Duke makes his way through turn number 3 in towards 4, and hopes he'll just be able to keep De Vries behind him, so that way he can say he wasn't the last of the pro drivers here today, at least those who finished. Duke does step aside there and lets Milton Tomlinson-Dennis go. Well, meanwhile, here comes Mark De Vries. Oh, and he tries to get the pound under Duke, but he finds a puddle of water. You couldn't make it out of the DC Motorsport driver. It goes backwards into the barrier, and well, just a puddle there, unsighted to it, and it's all gone round, but he gets the car turned back around once again. So for Peter Duke, that's going to release the place to Mark De Vries, who will go all the way up the road. But meanwhile, coming back from the back end of pro to the very front, here's Stephen Donnelly right now. He's still leading pro with Ryan Nickerson breathing down his neck, albeit Nickerson, an elite driver here who just wants to get him through, go chasing after Jack Wyborn, and Reece Saunders is there, but Donnelly goes round. Donnelly catches it just in time, and Nickerson stops in the nick of time to stop the car going with him, and in the end Stephen Donnelly releases the lead as Nickerson almost loses it as well. Saunders is back into the pro lead, but for how long will he hold it here? We know that Donnelly has got a huge amount of pace over everybody in the wet here in the pro class, and Saunders right now and did very well to hold on to lead for as long as he did earlier until Donny did arrive on the scene. But Donny now 2.5 seconds back. Understandably, he'll get himself mentally back together and look to go on the attack once again. In terms of other close battles in the class, well, Nick Stubb trying to battle his way past Mikey Story. Well, in fact, that's going to be a straightforward move there. I thought it might have been a little bit late on the brakes for both of them, but not so. Stubb will take that 5th place back in the pro class immediately there. He wastes no time in doing so, does Nick Stubb. And the Vulkan Fastest by Glasset Racing driver making what was quite the Herculean dive. But to be fair, Mikey Story being quite obliging as he looks to the inside and then brings himself back across. But as we do, say hello there to Proignaz, who says, well, hello, and we say hello to you, good sir, and saying, just jumped in, and I can see that Plug is in a 30-second lead. And indeed, right now, our race leader over on the elite class, here he is, 31.6 seconds is advantage right now. And, well, after was a relatively difficult start to the race, the pole sitter falling backwards down the order to what was third and fourth place at certain point. When the wet weather arrived, he timed it perfectly to come in on lap number 10, and in doing so, in the wet, he has survived in that Acura better than anybody else. He has had one big near miss, and he is actually missing a load of paint on what is the right-hand side of the car from the driver's perspective, as he almost found the stranded car Schubert Cardozo on what's the start-finish straight, but he managed to avoid it, and he grinded his way down the pit wall, and that was almost the end of the leader's race. It could have been tears there, but not quite so. But as he comes around right now, everyone's still pushing onwards here. We've still got some more surprises to come, surely. As well, in terms of one driver who delivered some surprises earlier on, Max Wheeler in the Audi R8 Evo 2. And, well, as he continues his way on through at the moment, as we say hello there to Harvey Wheeler in the YouTube chat, who's cheering on his fellow family member, I do believe his brother. Right now, the Phoenix Racing Blue driver, where it was going so well, a late incident in the first half of the race did mean that the British driver dropped a long way down from what was well inside the top 10 in the elite class all the way down to 13th place. So for Wheeler, it has been a race of two halves, really, and when the wet weather arrived, he seemed very happy in the Audi, and then that mistake has relegated him backwards, and at this point, well, right now he's just trying to see if he can salvage the points that he's got in his hands. But from him, as Reece Saunders off camera has just passed Jack Wyborn for overall position. But back to your overall standings, ladies and gentlemen. We've not got long left in this race now, only 2.5 minutes or so. And as Wheeler makes his way onwards, well, the Phoenix Racing Blue driver here right now just needs to get to the end like many of them. But in terms of the Saunders to Donnelly battle, well, he has now put both Wyborn and Nickerson between himself and Stephen Donnelly. And, well, there is Donnelly, who is looking to try and get involved. But as he rides aboard the Irishman's number 34 Mustang, the problem is he has to pick his way past two cars just to be in the fight. And then he's got to find his way past Reece Saunders, who understandably, whilst Reece is a very fair driver, they all are here. When it comes to that final lap, he's going to make his Ford Mustang so wide that it's going to be pretty much a traffic jam. But they're sliding around as Brandon Dyer in front has fallen back into this group. The Porsche 992 drive is struggling at this point in the race, so could this open up a lifeline here for Donny? Could it open up a opportunity for Nickerson to battle with Wyborn? Well, Donny getting the better exit out, turn number 14. And into turn number 15 he goes up the inside. Donnelly says, right, I'm going for it. And in the end, Nixon backs off entirely there, tucks in as Ime Hasselard is getting closer now. So Hasselard, the man for Heracles Performance, who has been lapping incredibly quickly compared to this group. He has finally arrived on the scene, but has he arrived too late? We will see. As Saunders, meanwhile, under pressure from Wyborn, who's going to try and go around the outside of him into turn one. Saunders has to go defensive there, and everyone else comes in following through. But Wyborn looking up the inside again into two. Can't quite find it. Will he find it into three instead in the Ferrari? The answer is yes, he's going to go all in here. And right now on the battles of the brakes, Nickerson meanwhile battling with him at Hasselard. Hasselard on the inside of him as well. So the Ferrari drives both coming on strong in this pack. And well, it's going to be Nickerson who holds off Hasselard. But Wyborn stays in that fight then. And he gets ahead of Reece Saunders, now moving into 6th place overall. Saunders flashes lights there. And a bit of a tap between the two of them. And in the end, Saunders pulls the car to the right. And well, Donny's right there now as Nickerson has to fight with him at Hasselard. And that means now the lead battle for the Pro class is well and truly back on. But here we go then, ladies and gentlemen, with 30 seconds left on the clock. Our race leader, Seb Plug, has just gone on to lap number 32. So these drivers, they've got this lap plus one more to go. This is going to be an absolutely incredible finish. We may not have a battle for the win in the elite class here today, but my goodness, are we going to have a battle in the Pro class that's going to go literally to the checkered flag, most likely. And as we do see Donnelly and Saunders so close together, well, right now, Stephen Donnelly, this is the onboard from what is the passenger side of the car, if there was a passenger seat. And you can see for all the spray, particularly at low speeds, there's none of it, but at high speeds there's plenty of it. And these two drivers right now, they have been the measure of each other. Donnelly has been the king of the wet. Oh my goodness, this slide loose. He cuts to the outside instead. Donnelly right now trying to get the car under control. He's trying to tame the Mustang, but right now the horse is bouncing left, right and centre. I mean, Reece Saunders is completely disciplined. Meanwhile, behind Hasselard the inside, and trying to take 7th place in the league class back there from Nickerson. He may just get it as Donnelly is sliding everywhere, left, right and centre, and Nixon's trying to come back at Hasselard. Looks like the inside into Gout Corder. It's absolute scenes here between this group, and right now as they make their way through, they may not be battling for the win, these two elite drivers, but they're certainly battling for the winner's share of the points as they make their way down onto the final lap. But here they go, ladies and gentlemen, and Saunders versus Donnelly. It's a drag race in towards turn number one, and as they make their way down to the braking zone, Saunders on the inside, Donnelly on the outside. Who are the two? Who's going to be the better on the brakes here? Well, it's going to be Donnelly around the outside. He just gets ahead, and they come in towards 2 and 3, but Donnelly runs wide, and now Saunders will look back at the inside. Donnelly slides loose, but Saunders goes right towards the back of him and can't find a way through, and we'll have to leave it for now as Donnelly goes deep. Saunders retakes the lead, or does he? Up the hill they go, in towards turn 4. Donnelly's on the inside, and he tries to take it back, but as they go side by side, we have to leave them there, ladies and gentlemen, because here comes your race winner overall, and in the elite class, it's going to be Seb Ploeg who takes the win for Vulkan Motorsports. He slides across the line. Right, with that, as he does it in style, back to the lead battle in the Pro class for a brief moment. We will come back to your finishers towards the front of the field in short order. Donnelly's back ahead of Hasselar and Reece Saunders. Hasselar's got between the two of them. That might be it for this battle, at least for now. We'll keep an eye on it for as long as we can, ladies and gentlemen, before we come to Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, who is going to see the finish of his race, and as they make the way up the hill right now, I think Hasselar might have just simply put the bung in this one, as they can't seem to get clear of that Ferrari driver, at least not for Saunders, as Hasselar is going to ride the back of this all the way on through. But as they do, we come to Tomlinson-Dennis, who takes second place overall in elite, and an absolutely brilliant drive in the end for World Racing STR Esports, really the second best of the field, and Lewis Kenyon will complete your overall and elite podium. The Vulkan Motorsports 2, head of Hayden Miller, and Brandon Dyer will be a further 34 seconds back, but he's struggling. They're all struggling here at the moment. They've run out of wet tyre life as Dyer's trying to hold on to 5th place. We come back to that pro lead battle right now as they make the way on down, and as they do, well, Brandon Dyer, to be fair, if he can hold on right now, as Wyborn tries to go around the outside, but there's contact between the two of them. When Wyborn goes out wide, there's even more contact as Dyer tries to open up the corner as much as possible. They make the way through, but has Wyborn got enough tarmac to work with here? Yes, he has, and he's not going to be able to run it either way, because Brandon Dyer is going to hold on for the Inter-Racing team ahead of Wyborn and Hasselar, and Stephen Donnelly will take the pro win in the end ahead of Ryan Nickerson, with Reece Saunders having to settle for second with a late spin at one of the hairpin corners off camera, but he will be your pro runner-up ahead of Tim Modig and Benedictus Sigavicius. And then shortly afterwards, well, Nathan Anstis, how about this? He's going to hold on to take his first, what is pro podium of the season for UK SimRacing Norris in a race packed with battles. He holds on to it, and Nick Stubb will be your last league lap finisher, bringing on home 14th place overall. But for him, 4th place in the pro class, and given how it started and how he's recovered to that spot, he won't be upset about that. My goodness, ladies and gentlemen, well, in the end, only 14 drivers making it home on the lead lap, but so many more making it home on laps down. We do apologise for the fact it was an absolutely scattered end to the race in terms of covering what was going on, but with the lead battle at pro at the same time as your leader coming across the finish line, we had to look one way then the other. But what we are going to do before we come to those race results, we are going to take a look back firstly at Seb Ploeg coming across the line, because he deserves his moment in the sunshine. And here was the Vulkan Motorsports 1 driver, and well, what a race it has been from him today. Absolutely, from lights out to checker flag. In the dry, it wasn't flawless, but as soon as the rain came, he was the rain master in Portugal, and then decided to demonstrate his prowess by giving us a 360-degree demonstration as he came across the line, albeit I think he will get a big rap on the wrist there from the stewards, because he couldn't quite get it back together, and well, the risk of collecting some other drivers there, but Ploeg definitely showing off, as he's shown today, just how strong he is in the wet. But meanwhile, after what was all of that, we saw this, of course, the ongoing battle for Donnelly versus Saunders. And we're going to follow this now back all the way to things. We don't want it interrupted. Donnelly took the place. We left you there, of course, when he then went deep here at turn number 3. But too wide, they made the way towards turn number 4. And at this point, well, now Saunders had to try and get involved. But on the outside there, Donnelly just getting a slight elbow, and this is where Hasselar got between the two of them, with Saunders losing traction coming out of turn number 4. Saunders now found the Ferrari drivers. They would tuck in and immediately went to the outside there to give himself all the grip to try and find a move on Donnelly. But Donnelly again saw what the Ferrari driver was trying to do, and at this point said, no you don't, I'm going to make you have to run wide there if you do. And as they made the way up this point, Stephen Donnelly was just very smart with regards to the way he positioned himself. He used Hasselar as his brake at this point, as we ride on board looking back from the rear of the number 30 car. And well, Hasselar really proved to be, at this point onwards, the rolling roadblock to Reece Saunders' opportunity to try and come back. Not because he's being slow, but because he went to be past Donnelly, and Donnelly simply said, you know what, I'm going to hold you there right behind and make sure you can never come through. And that spray definitely making Hasselar's life even more difficult as they made the way into turns 10 and 11. Hasselar winched that a little bit deep, and that brought Saunders right back into contention. As they then made the way up the rise from this point onwards, well, it was then for Saunders. I think the gap had just opened up so much. Donnelly in the end had to go defensive versus Hasselar, as saw the two in front, and Saunders came in absolutely razor hot there in turn 13, and that's why he lost the time in the places. He had to go for it, but in the end he was pushing too hard and he found the limit. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we head back to your live circuit side pictures after an incredible conclusion to the race between what was our pro top 2. And also, to be fair, up and down the field, it's been an incredible race from lights out to checkered flag. But there can only be one winner, and it was Seb Ploeg overall. And let's take a look at those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. So after 60 minutes of action absolutely dominated and dictated by the weather here in round number 3 of season 11 of the SimRacing International Thursday GT3 Championship, you've been catching all the racing action from Split A here today, and we got to see Seb Ploeg take victory over an elite for Vulkan Motorsports 1 by almost 40, yes, 4-0. 40 seconds over Milton Tomlinson-Dennis. The Dutchman here today absolutely delivered after the disappointment of Daytona. But for Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, a second place, he won't be upset about that. I think he'll be very pleased given the challenges of driving the Mercedes in the wet for the World of Racing STR Esports team. Lewis Kenyon completed your podium for Vulkan Motorsports 2, just ahead of his teammate of Hayden Miller, who lost out right towards the end of the race with a bit of a slip wide at turn number 3. And then we did see Brandon Dye in 5th place, holding on for the Inter-Racing team just ahead of Jack Wybon for MRC 495, Ime Hesselar for Heracles Performance, who really was one of the stars of today. It should be said, Hesselar in the dry had no pace. As soon as the wet weather arrived, the Ferrari driver was almost as quick as Ploeg in some respects. It was absolutely incredible to see. He was ahead of Stephen Donnelly, your pro winner in the end, who fought hard for JSD Racing, also one who came alive in the wet, ahead of Ryan Nickerson for Split Track Esports, and Reece Saunders round off your top 10 with second place in the pro class there for Altitude 3M Esports. 9, it could have been his win today if it were not for the intervention of the elite drivers right at the end. But what a battle it was. Tim Modig finished best dressed in 11th place there for Sim Coach, ahead of Benedictus Sinkevicius, with the Vulkan Motorsports 1 drive struggling as the wet weather continued to pound on. And then Nathan Anstis round off the pro podium in 13th place for UK Sim Racing Norris. What a drive from him to hold on, despite the intentions of the likes of Nick Stubb, who finished in 14th behind him, and also many a driver who finished a lap down, including Menno Blom and Fotis Katios. Your top 20 was completed by Mark Hutchinson, Mikey Story, Jesper Svensson, and Wesley Van Rens. And well done, I should say, to Wesley Van Rens for making his way all the way through to 20th, given the struggles he had in the qualifying session, starting 36th. And outside at your top 20, we also saw some absolute heroics from what was Ville Kitonen to make his way back through the field after his contact with William Humphrey early on. And Schubert Cardozo in the end managed to hold on to 10th place in the pro class, 22nd. But it was also a lap down for Max Wheeler, Cy Anthony, Adam Baker, Wayne Douglas, Thomas Pugh, Jamie Bardwell, Ashley Brooks, and Robin Noel Brown, who completed that top 30. It was also a further lap down, as we can see there, for David Hutchison and Ross Young, with Matthew Bacon being the last lap down finishers for Sim Coach, ahead of his teammate of Danny Sierres, who was 2 laps down at the finish. And then it was also 2 laps down for Lorenzo Gajeto, ahead of Mike Barber and Danny Phillips there. And we also did see what was 2 laps down for Mark De Vries. It was 3 laps down in the end for Peter Duke. And then we did have, sadly, retirements for 11 drivers, starting with James Howarth. And those retirements extended into Harry Shaw, Liam Fraser, Mark Johnson, Tom Weston, Carl Roy, Matthew Jordan, Ashley Coupland, William Humphrey, Samuel Clark, and Danny Van Oom. But coming on to the class finishing positions, and this is where all the points are made or lost in the championship, of course. And we can see in the elite class, firstly, it was victory by a comfortable margin for Seb Ploeg for Vulkan Motorsports 1, who showed us what could be done here in the Acura in the wet. Milton Tomlinson-Dennis, he drove a very steady race to the run-up spot for World of Racing STR in his Mercedes, and Lewis Kenyon in the Porsche 992, coming back alive in the wet, and just able to creep ahead of his teammate of Hayden Miller, who took the 4th place spot. It was then quite a sizable 25-second gap to Brandon Dyer for Inter-Racing Team, ahead of Jack Wybon, with the MRC 495 trying to fight forward all the way through the race, and almost made it a top 5, but fell just foul come the final corner. Ime Hesselar was 7th there for Heracles Performance, ahead of Ryan Nickerson, with Tim Modig and Benedictus Sinkevicius completing the top 10, and the Sim Coach drive definitely moving forward as Sinkevicius gradually moved backward. It was a lap down for Matt Hutchinson, but still got some good points on the board after his spin at the start of the race at turn number 5 to recover to 11th place. He won't be too upset about that. He was ahead of Jesper Svensson. And then we did see Max Wheeler, who brought on what was some great progress early on, unfortunately having to settle for 13th place with a late incident for Phoenix Racing Blue. It was a lap down for Thomas Pugh for Axis Sport X. We didn't see too much of today, unfortunately due to difficulty in the conditions, but he was a lap ahead of Mike Barber and Danny Phillips. And then we did have the retirements for Ashley Coupland, William Humphrey and Danny Van Oom. And then coming to the pro class. And as we can see here, come the end of 60 minutes. Well, what a race it was, but only one driver could win it. And it was JSD Racing Stephen Donnelly who took the win by 4.5 seconds. But the 4.5 seconds there do not tell the full story of how close it was between him and Reece Saunders for Altitude 3M Esports. UK SimRacing Racing Norris's Nathan Anstisian had to fight hard to be rewarded with his first podium of the season, but what a field he had to hold behind him, including Nick Starb, who was the last lead lap finisher of the Pro class for Vulkan Fasters by Glass Tip Racing. Menno Blom takes his best result of the season in 5th for SimRacing Team Lowlands in the Corvette that's definitely coming on as the season goes on. He was ahead of Split Track Esports' Fortis Katios, who at one point was leading well, but unfortunately the rain became too severe as it continued to come down, and that saw the number 90 driver fall down the field after his heroics at the start of the race. Mikey Story took 7th place for Dexterous Motorsports Kumar ahead of 9 Pegasus Panthera Racing's Wesley Van Rens, who achieved his best result of the season after the difficulties of Daytona. And we saw Villa Katonen in 9th place in the end for Beowulf Racing Team, just ahead of Schubert Cardozo in the end. And the Inter-Racing Team driver will be gutted at the fact that was looking to be a 7th or 8th place, in the end had to be a 10th. But thankful that his car that was stricken on the start-finish line did not get collected by anyone in what was a very do-or-die month for many a driver over the rise. Cy Anthony was best dressed in 11th place for UK SimRacing Hamilton. Unfortunately, not quite able to finish inside the top 10, but came close, ahead of LS Racing's Adam Baker. And it was Wayne Douglas ahead of Jamie Bardwell, with Ashley Brooks completing the top 15. It was a challenging day for Robin Noel Brown for GPX SimSport Xenon, who looked quick in the early stage of the race, and after the light rain became moderate, suddenly his race pace declined, and the spin cost him a significant chunk of points. And it was the same for David Hutchison there. Things did not quite go well for the Axis SimSport X driver, and Ross Young, Matthew Bacon and Danny Cilliers also experienced challenges. It was 2 laps down for Cilliers, as it was for none other than Lorenzo Gojetto, and then Mark de Vries and Peter Duke completed the running order there, with the DC Motorsport driver 3 laps down, but ahead of the retirees of James Howarth, Harry Shaw, Liam Fraser, Mark Johnson, Tom Weston, Carl Roy and Matthew Jordan. So that completes our rundown of the finishing order, ladies and gentlemen. All these results, of course, subject to any stewards' inquiries. And, well, as things cool down on circuit, and we cool down here in the commentary booth for a little bit, well, don't worry, we're not going to leave you just with the rain in the background, because we're going to step away and be back in approximately 5 minutes' time to kick off post-round interviews off here in Portugal. And what have our drivers got to say about it? Well, you'll find out very shortly. And it's lights out and away we go for our season opener as Sardpine gets a good start, but look alongside him and you'll see there Milton Tomlinson-Dennis immediately go on the attack into the braking zone. 1 drive into the grass already, that's Mikey Story, but 3 wide they come into the opening corner. That's a bold move there. William Humphrey makes the place as they make the way through in towards turn number 2. I think the Altitude 3M Esports driver here might just be fancying his chances once again as they come into the braking zone now for turn number 1, and as they make the way from right into left, well, Hayden Miller here side by side with him. They'll go all the way through to turn number 3, and Saunders does take the place there. That's for overall position, not for pro position. Saunders is the pro leader, but he goes a bit deep there in 3 to the inside of 4 then, and Miller right now enjoying this. Saunders enjoying it. A little bit of rub and contact between the 2 of them, but nothing wrong with a bit of bump and grind between the 2 Ford, for the Ford and the Corvette, the 2 Americans I should say. And
with those 2 Evo drivers in front of them, they're just, you know, they're realistically in a completely different race. They're just a barrier up towards the likes of Rubino and Wendell. Oh, there's Rubino going off the road, and here comes James Bostock, past 1, past 2. This is a great little move from James.
Oh, and look behind him as well. Hardiak, up high, he decides to come back down low. But Denny Plurger has really lost a lot of ground here. He's lost 7 places since the start of this race in that green Porsche. But look at this for the lead. Hammond wants it. He's gone back down the inside. He got off the brakes again to let the car down the inside of Rob Mackay. And you said Rob was going to be clinging on at the front. And now he's clinging on to second. Great move by Lewis Hammond. Really good committed stuff. And look, down the inside, Richard White. He wants a piece of this in the Porsche. He's got James Bostock.
And it's lights out and away we go here as Mirko Bortolotti goes exactly on the green, and as they roar the way down towards turn number 1, Martin Statman side by side with him, but look behind Tim Perry under pressure and Miguel Leon immediately as the Enosis Esports driver tries to put the pressure on. Further back we've got 3, 4 wide, they're all in the crush as they come through the opening bank. Look back for the rear of your second place runner of Statman, and Statman right now for the Gazex Racing team. What he's trying to do here, I think now, is just hold on to second, and if needed, he may have to act as a bit of a buffer and perhaps sacrifice a little bit of his race for the race leader. leader here. Although Bortolotti, to be fair, I think might be holding some pace back. But here comes Lux in the tow. In towards what we roller coaster they come with the Virginian corkscrew. It's left into right very quickly here as they both make the way. And it's too wide on entry. But Lux gets ahead. It's up into second now, as it will be Martin Statman falling down to third. But Callum Lux does clear another one. And now only one car is between him and an opportunity of victory here tonight. Which is Perry going to make the move, or I'm going to have to make the move for him? Well, there's your answer. Perry's going to go on the inside here of Dean into the braking zone. Edwards gets to watch it from the popcorn seat view. Perry there being too wide on exit. Dean's going to try and hang around the outside. Does Edwards think about going up the inside as well? He gets himself ready for it in case there's contact, but there's not. Perry there being fair. Dean tucks back in behind. Lovely move there from Tim Perry. And I think meanwhile Beardsworth will hope they don't get close up in time, as Beardsworth's going to look up the inside. He goes all in, and it's from very far back. He gets it stopped, however, and Beardsworth there nails the move, but Tillerson's going to come back at him up the hill. Does he go in on the brakes here? This is bold to do it on the inside. No, he does not. And Brian Beardsworth at the end, he gets it wrong. He goes out wide at turn number 6. Tillerson's going to be too wide with him, but too wide they're going to turn 7. Tillerson goes on the switch back there. 9 has no way through, and in the end they come down towards turn number 8. Well, there Tillerson backs off. He lets Hutchinson go around the outside, but is it the right call? Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews. And how better to kick things off with our interviews tonight than from speaking to the man today who took victory in one of the most dominant ways. It is none other than Sid Ploeg, who joins me in the interview room now. Good evening to you, Sid, and what a drive from yourself. Almost 40 seconds you took victory by in the end. I mean, that's Lewis Hamilton levels of dominance. That's Michael Schumacher levels of dominance in the wet. You must be absolutely proud of that one.
Yeah, man, it was such a fun race. I always love to drive the rain. It was incredible. I actually didn't expect to pull such a big gap, but eventually I did because I was not pushing at all. I was just taking it easy. I'd have a big gap, but I was just keep pulling away even though I wasn't pushing.
Well, the gap may have been a bit of a surprise, but what was also perhaps a surprise, firstly, let's talk about qualifying. On pole, and for the most part of the qualifying session, you'd set yourself, I believe it was a 40.9 if I remember correctly, and that was 2.5 tenths faster than everybody else. And then you decide to increase the margin by a further tenth, setting a 40.8 at the end of the session. Were you surprised with your qualifying result, or did you expect to be on pole?
I actually made quite a wet setup, and of course in quali I don't want to have such a different setup. So I wasn't expecting to get so much pace out of the car, but then the quali happened, or like practice happened. I already got quite high in the standing. I don't know which exact position, but then quali happened, and I got a good lap. Already was quite far ahead, and then it was like, yeah, but I can still gain a bit of time. And then I was just trying to keep going faster because what if someone still improves? And then I got this amazing lap of a 0.6, I believe it was.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah, 0.6.
Oh, indeed. It was an absolutely amazing lap. I mean, you always keep us guessing. I can tell you that with qualifying laps. You just find this magical way to find time. But pole position secured. And just a quick comment on the fact that the first 4 positions of the front 2 rows, all Vulkan Motorsports drivers today. I mean, that must have been a sight to behold.
Yeah, that was quite a good moment to see that the Vulkan team was doing so well. It's like, oh shit, we actually got top 4 is just full Vulkan, so we were so happy with that.
Well, from the happiness of that, speaking of perhaps a less happy moment in the race, your start. We started in dry conditions, and in the early stages, whilst you may have been leading initially, you gradually started to fall back a little bit into the pack. Was that to be expected because of the wet setup on the car?
No, I got a slow down in the last turn. I cut a bit too much of the inside. Got a slow down. I was like, oh, oops. Well, at least it's still people of my team around me, so it's fine. So I'll just lose a position to Hayden. And then when the wet came, I was like, okay, now we can swap around again. So yeah, it was quite a scare.
Well, a bit of a scare, but still you survived that, and then then the wet weather came, and suddenly you went from being quick to lightning fast. I mean, you came in on lap number 10. It seemed to be the right time to come on in, with some drivers coming in a lap earlier, but afterwards it just looked so everything clicked together for yourself.
Yeah, it was quite funny because me and Hayden were discussing the whole time, like 5 laps before we actually pitted. Like we were like, should we pit now? Nah, another lap. Should we pit now? Nah, another lap. And then all of a sudden it started raining so hard. We're like, we gotta pit now. We gotta pit now. So we boxed, and then I actually jumped the Milton, I believe he's called. I jumped him in the pits. Was surprising, and then it was just like, I gotta put my head down. I gotta fly. And it actually happened. So, yeah.
Oh, indeed. You were absolutely flying from that point onwards. And, well, from that point in the race, it looked so nobody was able to get near you. However, there was one moment where a car parked across the start-finish straight, I think it was Schubert Cardozo's car, had spun out the final corner, and it wasn't in a place you could see. It was right at the top of the rise out the final corner. Thankfully, you just missed him, but you still had a brush with the wall.
Yeah, I saw like in the distance, I saw Aston Martin spin. I was like, yeah, but he's behind the crest. I was so scared. I was like, I come over the crest. I was like, okay, I can avoid him. Then he started driving forwards. I was like, I'm dead. But then I barely missed him, and then just like I was next to the wall, aquaplaning. I couldn't get away from it. I was just like, half throttle, just keep your wheel straight, try to slowly get away from the wall, because if you then turn, you just instantly spin. Was such a scary moment.
Oh, it was a scary moment, no doubt about it, but thankfully a moment you were able to survive, and off the back of that we then saw you have a relatively stable race for the rest of it, and I could imagine those last couple of laps, they must have felt like a dream to be that far ahead and still setting the fastest laps of the race. I mean, you couldn't ask for better.
Yeah, I was not pushing a lot because from practice, I knew that the tires would degrade at the end a lot. Like all the threads of the tire were just gone, so you were aquaplaning like crazy. So I was trying to prevent that. But the last 10 minutes were so scary, especially the last turn. I was just aquaplaning around, like I'm just gonna take it easy, but still being so fast was surprising to me.
Oh, fair play. Well, the speed might have been a bit of a surprise, but still, the result may not lead to the surprise of the fact that this is going to propel you right back towards the top end of the Elite Championship come the end of round 3. So it's onwards we go then to our next venue, of which it is none other, of course, than the Miami International Autodrome. How are you feeling for the series' first ever visit there?
I actually quite enjoy the track. But from the testing I did, I believe the Acura was actually quite bad around it. But I'll see if I can make it work, because I didn't know the Acura fully yet. I actually started driving the Acura very recently. So when I did practice in Miami, I was still like getting used to the car. But I hope I can make the car work around there, because otherwise I'll be very slow there.
All fair play. We look forward to seeing whether you can get to grips with the Acura and Miami and create what is a winning combination once again and add some sprint race wins to your feature race wins of the season. But just as we get ready to let you go, of course, as always, we do have to ask, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
This time I'll do it to the team. If anyone wants to join, we're always welcome for people to join. Not only we have elite drivers, we also have some lower class drivers, so there will always be people for your pace. So message me and I can get you into the team.
All fair play. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to learn from one of the very best on the grid here, no doubt about it, at least in the wet as he's demonstrated today, well, Sir Plug, they're saying the door at Vulkan Motorsports is open. But with that said, it's been an absolute pleasure to have a chat with you this evening. Congratulations on your second win of the season, and an absolutely brilliant one in the wet, no doubt about it. We'll see you at Miami to see whether you can add more to it. But until then, my friend, have a lovely rest of your evening.
Yes. Good luck. See ya.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Sir Ploeg, the elite driver in the end for Vulkan Motorsports, who absolutely impressed, no doubt about it, from start to finish. And we're talking about there the fact that he surprised himself in some respects, in that his qualifying lap in the end, there was still more time out there, and he didn't need to go out for it necessarily, but he was very happy with it. That was one surprise. And the other one, of course, was the fact that when we did see the wet weather come, the fact that he was so far ahead on pace compared to the rest of his rivals, including his own teammates. And well, in the end, the last surprise surprise he had. Not a pleasant one. Was having to take that evasive action to Schubert Cardozo's car, but still, both drivers there having to try and do their best given the circumstances, and Plurg being able to survive it just about there, even if he brushed the wall. And in the last 10 minutes, talking about the aquaplaning with the tyres being so heavily worn in the wet, but he was able to keep it together to bring home what would be an absolutely famous win for seasons to come, because the Vulkan Motorsports 1 driver absolutely flying high at the very front of the field. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we get ready for our second interview. We'll be back very shortly, and well, we're going to stay with winning ways, but who does that mean we're going to be interviewing? Well, you can take a guess and you'll find out shortly. And so on the theme of winning ways, if you guessed Stephen Donnelly, you were absolutely spot on, ladies and gentlemen, because our pro winner from today, he now joins me in the interview room. Good evening to you, Stephen, and well, what a race of yourself. I mean, it has been a day of several changes of circumstances in many ways, but in the end, you brought home the win from what was 10th in class of the grid and 24th. I mean, can you quite believe it, or has it come a bit of a surprise?
I can't really believe it, to be honest. No, buzzing just to be truthfully. Really, really happy. Qualifying didn't go perfect, but it was still decent. It's just the grid is so crazy fast. So yeah, 24th. But yeah, just glad I was able to bring it home. Keep it here going straight.
Oh, indeed. It was an incredible conclusion to the race. And just talking a little bit about qualifying now, I had received some insider knowledge in the build-up to today that in the practice race earlier this week, you were absolutely lightning quick. Something gives me the feeling we might have seen a lot more rain there compared to what we did here until the race really got underway. Were you set up more for the wet weather rather than the dry?
Yes, I had a wet setup on. Yeah.
All fair play. And so with regards to qualifying, of course, I guess it was more of a trying to get the most out of the car and then just praying the wet weather would come at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I actually had a wet setup on even for quali, just to keep the car the same. And yeah, I was hoping rain comes as soon as possible. So I knew I had it pace once it rained, you know, but I was just trying to keep it on track and stay safe until the rain.
Now,
Yeah.
speaking of the start of the race, of course, we did see you in the Haribo machine start to fall backwards a little bit in the early stage and getting caught up in several fights. However, as soon as the rain arrived, I get the feeling there was probably a switch that was flicked inside the car and with yourself to say, right, it's go time now, all in, get those wet tyres on and just attack everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly. I was just trying to stay safe at the start, try not to battle too much. But yeah, once the rain came, I was happy to light her up. So yeah, all good.
Now, as the race went on, of course, we did see you make more and more progress as time went on, gradually moving from what was the bottom end of the Pro Top 10 into the Top 5. There were spins for some drivers, of course, and a bit of elbow rubbing as well. But what we really loved to see was in the closing stages, this incredible battle between yourself and Rhys Saunders. I've got to imagine, how much tyre life did you have left before you got to that battle? Because you must have ripped the life out of the wet tyres.
You know what? No, it felt okay. It felt kind of the same. I was happy enough. It was just managing the field and putting the car in the right place at the right time. That sure that they'd see you and stuff. But yeah, I had a good battle with Rhys. I had to pass him twice. I got knocked off. I got spun, turn 3. And I had 4 minutes left. There was 2 cars between me and Rhys. I thought, no, that's not happening. But I just kept plugging away at it and put the head down and got him in the last lap. Turn 1, yeah. So, no, I was very happy. I'm buzzing.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, a lot of people in the YouTube chat absolutely loved your battle of Rhys Saunders right at the end. And just on that, of course, we did see that you seemed to be the more comfortable driver with putting the car wherever you wanted on the circuit. Do you feel the elite drivers around you, so the likes of Ime Hesselaar and also Ryan Nicholson, played a role? Because they did keep trying to fight each other whilst you two were fighting as well. It was almost as if you had the crossing of the streams between the 4 of you.
Yeah, no, it was tight. It was really, really good fun, you know. I suppose Rhys was just trying to get away as much as possible, and I was trying to manage my way through the elites. So, no, it was fantastic, to be honest. I was really, really happy. Everything went well.
Oh, Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. I could hear it in your voice how happy you are with the result. It's your best result of the season thus far.
It is.
And
It is.
whilst we are now going back to drier conditions in a week's time for Miami, can we expect you to be back on the podium there?
I would highly doubt it. I don't even have the track, so no, I can't see it. No, I'll be back down to the usual mid-pack or less, I would say, unless it rains.
Well, there may not be a risk of rain at Miami, but when we do have our next wet weather race much later on the season, I do hope we get to see you back up there again. I think everybody does. Although, with that in mind, of course, just before I do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a thank you to or a shout out on the broadcast tonight?
Just to the teammate, Joe, for helping and that, no, that's it. Hey, thank you. And yourselves, and all the crew at the SimRacing.
Oh, well, Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room this evening. A brilliant win indeed, one that's going to be remembered for a long time for the incredible nature of how you've come back through it, the wet conditions. Well done on your best results so far this season. We'll see you in Miami, and hopefully we'll get to see you enjoying the battles, whether you're at the front or in the mid-pack.
Appreciate it, Paul. Thank you. Cheers.
Have a good one. So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from JSD Racing, Stephen Donnelly, and well, what a feisty race from him today. He absolutely enjoyed himself out there, no doubt about it, from start to finish, and where he proved to us, or confirmed we should say, the point that we thought about was the fact that the setup on the car was entirely dedicated to one thing and one thing only, the wet conditions, and Stephen doing exactly what he needed to in qualifying with a wet setup in dry conditions. He maximised it as much as possible to qualify as high. He wanted to be a bit higher. He admitted there 24th wasn't what he quite expected. I suspect he was hoping for a top 20, but when the rain arrived in the race, he very quickly made sure to get onto the wet tyres. We do see in the replay footage here, and after that it was go, 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 and he said he was just looking left, right and centre for the moves, picking them off whether they're pro or elite drivers, and in the end, well, he came up behind the man who he'd battle, and he found his way past once, but then fell slightly off the circuit and had to do it twice. It was Rhys Saunders, and what a battle between the two of them. And he also talked about there the fact there was the interweaving with the battling with Ryan Nicholson and also Emma Hasselar that just made it even more intriguing. So a brilliant battle, although he was honest there to say that in the dry conditions next week, we can't expect him necessarily to be up there, but if he is too, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you one thing, Stephen Donnelly, well, right now, if this is the only time we see him take a win this season, it's definitely going to be up there as well, the pro wins of the season, if not in the series history, for how terrific it was. And, well, I can't blame the Irishman for being proud of this one. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come on to our next interview shortly. We'll be back, and we're staying in the pro class. And so, ladies and gentlemen, for our third interview, it's only appropriate if we've heard from the winner of the Pro Class. We're going to hear from the man who battled hard with Stephen Donnelly all the way at the end of the race. It's Rhys Saunders who joins me. Good evening to you, Rhys. What a race. I mean, there's a part of you that's probably screaming right now, why couldn't I have won? But there's probably a part of you that's also saying, you know what, that was absolutely brilliant fun.
Oh, absolutely. That was mega. And Stephen's such a nice guy as well. We were teammates back in the day as well. So, no, that was incredible. My shoulders ache. I don't think I relaxed at any point for the entire race. And, yeah, seemed to fight everybody at some point.
Oh, indeed. What a race it was. We can relax those shoulders now as we gradually dissect things. Let's talk a little bit about qualifying first. Now, obviously, we caught up in the build up to this round, and you were saying to me that you're feeling good for it, but we needed to watch out for Stephen. 9th overall, 2nd in class, and it was Wayne Douglas who took pole. Were you happy with your qualifying session, or do you think you could have been higher?
No, it's about where I thought I'd be. That lap from Wayne Douglas was absolutely insane. He's a bit of a ringer. He turns up in certain series. He's got 1,000 iRating, and he's got about 4,000 iRating pace. I just don't think he does officials. But Wayne is, he's absolutely rapid, and he's a seasoned veteran of many a league. And I've commentated on him before, actually. So losing out to him, not too disappointing. And then, it was into the race from there. But no, qualifying, P2 in class, P9 overall, I was happy with that. I thought I was far enough away from Stephen when he was all the way back in, I think, P24, but wasn't to be.
Well, it wasn't necessary to be, but talking about how the race evolved then, obviously we had the surprise of Wayne Douglas, but in the early stages, before the rain arrived, we saw a solid start from yourself. You've got a bit of a characteristic of doing this and quickly moving forward. And then the rain comes on the scene, and you made your way in on what was the second phase, or lap number 10 rather than 9. Seemed to be the right call there, but were you mentally prepared for what was to come?
No, I mean, I'd done the practice race, which I don't normally do, but I'd done the practice race this week, so I was probably a bit better prepared than I would have been. I was grateful for doing that. And yeah, it was really tricky conditions. It was ever so slightly different to the practice race in that it rained and then it stopped very briefly. It was a bit greasy, but wasn't quite wet enough for slicks. And then when the rain did come, it was time to jump. And yeah, I think I called that on the right lap. I actually overtook Wayne in the early phases of the race, and then he got me back in the dry spell. And then when I pitted, I think I pitted out of P2 in class. Got away, and I ended up quite a bit in front of him as the rain had come, and then I had a self spin into the Portimão corner, which I think might be turn 9, which yeah, undid all my good work, unfortunately, and from there on it was just a battle royal.
Well, it very quickly went to a battle royal, like you say, and we did see yourself and many names take the lead and drop out, including none other than Fortis at some point. Also yourself, we also saw in the mix there none other than what was, I do believe, Daytona at one point. But the recurring theme seemed to be that whilst you may have had that one spin, you were the constant at the front. But was there always this lingering thought in your mind that Stephen Donnelly's going to arrive at some point, that he would be inevitably there?
Absolutely. When I was fighting Fotis for the class lead, I could see Stephen's gap coming down to us, and I knew he'd got really strong pace. And it was just, I was like, oh no, I was like, we're fighting the wrong people. We shouldn't be fighting each other. We should be trying to stay as far away from Stephen as possible, because he was absolutely rapid. And yeah, so yeah, no, it was good, and obviously mixing up with the elites as well.
Oh, indeed. And mixing out with the elites there, we heard Stephen's perspective about the fact that he wanted to get past you and then try to run away, but the elites also got in the mix there. Was it a bit perhaps frustrated? Because, of course, you want to fight them. They're enjoying their own fight for class, not class win necessarily, but for them, it's a top 6 of the class, so it's just as valuable points-wise in a way. And you two are fighting over the win. It's almost as if you've got to try and get them to back off of each other as they're trying to tell you guys, can you back off and let us fight instead?
Absolutely. I didn't want to take any risks. We're round 3 in the championship, and after some mixed results at Daytona last week, got a big picture to think of, and tripping over an elite isn't how I want my season to go. So yeah, it was trying to make my way through them, because I think I've got a bit of extra space on Jack and Brandon, without taking too many undue risks. And they were fighting crazy hard, both immensely skilled. So yeah, but no, and yeah, Stephen twice put on just some absolutely incredible overtakes on me. So I tip my hat off to him at that.
And just in amongst that, of course, incredible overtakes from Stephen, but we also did see a Stephen-esque driver in the elite class come into the mix right at the end. Ime Hesselar in his Ferrari that had come from a very far way back to also get involved. You're probably thinking to yourself at that point, where on earth has he come from? I haven't seen him for the best part of 58 minutes.
Yeah, I saw him coming on my relative, and it was one of those ones where it was almost like a non-entity to a point, because I thought, well, if he catches me, great. I don't mind him overtaking me because, well, there's no points in it. But yeah, I saw him coming. He had mega pace. He'd come through from P17 on the grid, so not too far back. I don't know what sort of start he'd had. But yeah, no, his pace was really strong. And yeah, it was that one. It was coming into the final lap. Me and Stephen, we'd gone side by side through turn 1. Stephen actually drove around the outside of me, which was just impressive. I hope he caught it. And then into turn 3, I'd got the inside, and then I was on the outside for turn 4. And Stephen had muscled me up onto the curb. I got a bit of wheel spin there, and I should have had the traction and the run if it wasn't for getting pushed just onto the curb slightly. And I still fancied my chances of getting up his inside into turn 5, the downhill hairpin. But Hesselar got there, unfortunately, and just shifted me on out of the way. So that was that, and that was challenge over. But yeah, no complaints.
Oh, indeed. I mean, we couldn't complain. Everybody loved the absolute spectacle that the two of you are putting on in amongst all the elite drivers. We take a look back at some of the footage of you battling with Fortis earlier on in the race. But With this result, it does mean that you continue to move forward in the championship, and it may even mean, in fact, that you do retake the lead going into our next round, which is, of course, at Miami. How are you feeling for a trip to Florida?
Florida's nice at this time of year, I think. I think the track temps are going to be insanely hot. So in sim time, it's going to be May. So I think it's going to be a absolutely melting track temp. And I've never driven Miami in the sim. I've never played any of the F1 games. So my experience with the track so far is watching it on TV on an F1 weekend. Thankfully, I've got Tuesday off work next week, so I'll have a bit of time to practice and yeah, hopefully be competitive again next week. I think it's going to be very, very tight points-wise. I think Fotis finished P6, so not sure what that points gap makes it. Maybe beating Stephen would have helped the case, and I'd probably have took the lead at that point.
Oh, absolutely fair. It's going to be tight, and a lot of practice might be needed at Miami to make sure that you can stay one step ahead. But as we do get ready to let you go, as always, we have to ask, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout-out or a mention to on the broadcast?
Just Stephen, just for an absolutely fantastic drive. He went around the outside of me twice, which I don't normally allow to happen. But no, he was absolutely fantastic. And I'd called it in advance. He did really well in the practice race. And I think when we spoke earlier on today, I said, watch out for him. He's the dark horse. And yeah, my prediction came true. So maybe I'll put the lottery on tomorrow. But no, thank you very much. Cheers for having me, Paul.
No problem at all. Reese, thank you for your time this evening. Well done the second place. And we will see you at Miami to see whether you can make it another first place.
Cheers. Thank you.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Altitude Frame Esports is Reese Saunders, and well, absolutely chuffed with his drive today. You can hear it in his voice. Even though he's been beaten, it feels like a win because of the fun he's had. And those are the races here at SimRacing International that are most rewarding for our drivers, because he's been up, down, battling around, and we did see in the footage there his early spin, which cost him a bit of time, and put him right in the thick of the fighting with Fortis Katios and also Cy Anthony. But as he made his way deeper and deeper into this race, Reese was the constant at the front of the field, but there was also the constant threat of Stephen Donnelly, and as he did mention, they've been telling me earlier on today, keep your eyes out for the JST Motorsports Ford Mustang. It's going to come through when the wet weather arrives. It did, and what a battle it was between the two titans. Indeed, it will be one we won't forget. But for Reese Saunders, of course, he's got to keep the bigger championship picture in mind, and that's what he said towards the end there, was the fact that he's thinking about the championship and how he needs to maintain those points and make sure when he goes to Miami, even if the practice doesn't quite make up to a win, he's still going to get some good points there and continue his way to the top of the standings. And the pro drive right now, he's definitely got his head on straight when it comes to those championship points, and I can imagine he's going to continue to be an ever-present threat at the top all the way through to the season finale. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got one more interview to come, and well, we're going to be heading back to the elite class, but who's it going to be with? You're about to find out. And so, ladies and gentlemen, our interviews come to a close because we are now joined in the interview room by none other than Jack Wyborn. Good evening to you, Jack. And, well, what a changing day you've had today. 18th in qualifying. Fell a bit down the order, if I remember correctly, in the early stages with the wet weather, but fought your way all the way through to a 6th place finish. I mean, you must be pleased with the end result, even if it was a changing day.
Yeah, it was a very entertaining race, to be fair. In the dry, pace was okay. I think I sat 7th or 8th in class, but I'd made a couple of setup changes ready, like preempting the wet. So, but yeah, fortunately they helped, and the pace was really good after that when the rain came.
Oh, 100%. We saw you really come alive when the wet weather arrived on the scene. That seems to be a theme for Ferrari drivers, in the fair. Ime Hasselite enjoying a similar story to yourself, given the fact you seem to struggle in the dry. With your qualifying points as well, we did see Ferraris in general seemingly just not quite perhaps up there compared to others, but also, and perhaps something you can tell us a little bit more about how close it was in qualifying just to get inside that top 20 overall. I mean, a 10th could gain you 2 or 3 places. We saw you gain some time right at the end of the session.
Yeah, well, I think when I was looking at the standard, and even in the elite class, I think I gained a 10th and a half, and that put me up to 2 or 3 spots. I don't know what it did to the overall grid, but yeah, it was so close. I think there was 9/10 between where I was and P1. I'd say that's the biggest gap it's been, but I've actually, every week I've qualified 9/10 off the leader, so consistent.
Well, definitely consistent, no doubt about it. But what we also got to see was that consistency would be rewarded over the race. Obviously, in the dry initially, not quite making the progress. But as soon as the wet weather came, we saw you duck into the pits on the right lap, on lap number 10. Was that a call you always had in mind, or was it a bit of a coin flip as to, do I go one more lap? Do I go earlier? Because we did see some drivers brave it in the 11th lap, and they're the ones who suffered the most.
Yeah, well, when I come around, I was like, when I was on that lap, it come over dark. I was like, that should have been the lap. And I was like, no, the car still feels right. But I was like, yeah, this is the lap to go in and get it. The spray was getting worse. The aquaplane in the middle of the corners was getting really bad. So I was like, yeah, this is the time to dart in. And yeah, I think it didn't make much change on the pit stop on positions. It was after when everyone else had to warm up their wets and mine were already up to temperature. That sort of helped me get past the first few cars in the wet.
Oh, I see. Well, in the end, as you're able to get those tyres up to temperature, making that progress, it really started to come alive. And we saw deeper and deeper into the race. Your pace just got stronger and stronger. And in the end, you were fighting for what would be an incredible duel for 6th through to 8th for the elite class. I mean, just take us through that from your perspective, because it wasn't just elite drivers in that. We had the pro leaders fighting in amongst it all.
No, well, yeah, that was just something else. When I managed to pass the 3 pros when I come out of the pits, but I scampered away. Obviously, I was catching Brandon, and I can't pronounce the other bloke's name, so I'm not going to try and butcher that. And yeah, we was having a good little battle, but then I made a mistake. I was following one of the lap cars. I come out of the far corner, but I couldn't see where I was with the spray. I ended up like tobogganing on the curb, and that sent me firing into the wall. And it just gave me a slight bit of wheel damage, but luckily it didn't affect the pace too much.
Well, fair play. Well, a little bit of damage, but it didn't really hamper your pace. And in the end, you were able to stay comfortably back on the circuit. And we saw you hold on for that 6th place, albeit all over the back of Brandon Dyer on the final lap. I think a part of you must have been begging, come on, I've got to find a way through. But he just ran you a little bit wide at the end, and you couldn't quite do it.
Yeah, he obviously took a tighter line to second to last corner, and I thought I'll just try and go deep. I've got nothing to lose here. I can keep it on the track. I might pass him, I might not. But yeah, where he had a little bit of aquaplane and we had a little bit of contact, like it happens in the wet. But yeah, I just couldn't get the power on enough off the track to keep it perfect to try and pass him. But no, it was really good. And with Reese passing me into the last lap or the second to last lap, I was like, I need to get past you now. But he weren't going to let me through because Stephen was right behind him. So it was all up in the, like, sort of everyone try to fight over the same bit of track, but all in between each other. So yeah, it made it really good fun.
It was absolutely incredible to watch. I can imagine the fun you were having inside the cockpit of your car. But with that, of course, a solid result for today in the mixed conditions. We go back to more static and sunny conditions at Miami in a week's time. What can we expect from you there?
I don't know. I think my pace was all right when I did the officials there. I obviously haven't done it since then, so I'm going to have to try and get some laps in as well, ready for that. But yeah, hopefully another good result. Just need to sort out my qualifying, really, and just getting that lap in instead of try to chase it at the end still, because little mistakes were creeping in throughout the quali session and I just couldn't hook it up.
I see. Well, a few mistakes in qualifying, but I'm sure you'll iron those out gradually, and Miami will be a good test of that. But just before we do let you go, Jack, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the stream?
Well, so thanks to my mate Vulkan. He was in the chat. He was in chat with me, so he was quite helpful when things weren't going right, especially with the damage and that after the spin and that. So yeah, just give him a shout out as he was quite helpful for a change.
Oh, fair play. Well, I'm sure he'll be grateful for the gratitude from yourself. But Jack, we'll leave it there. Congratulations today on a solid 6th place finish, elite and overall. A brilliant drive, plenty of entertainment for yourself, and we look forward to plenty more at Miami in a week's time. But until then, my friend, have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you very much. Take care.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Jack Wyborn, the elite MRC 495 Ferrari driver, and well, what a day of fun he's had today, no doubt about it. He's enjoyed himself from what was the challenges of qualifying, perhaps all the way through to the trickiness of these wet conditions in the race. But talking about there as well, the fact that in qualifying, and a general theme is that he does want to work on his qualifying pace a bit more, but he felt very happy the way his race evolved, particularly as he needed to find his way past a number of pro drivers to move forward. And if it were not for a mistake that he made earlier on, perhaps he would have had more time to make that move for 5th place versus Brandon Dyer, but in the end he had to go with what he had, and in the end it was a lot of pace in the Ferrari and that we did see gradually batting its way forward, but unfortunately just ran out of time. And in those closing stages, well, Brandon Dyer had the opportunity just to run him a little bit wide through the last couple of corners, and that's what enabled Wyborn to be able to perhaps get close initially, but then lose out when he didn't have the space on the road to make the final overtake happen just before the finish line. But still, he's enjoyed himself, no doubt about it, and also enjoyed the chase versus Benedictus Sinkevicius there, the man he was saying who he'd butchered the name of, and completely understandable and well respected for that. But in the end, the elite driver enjoyed himself, and hopefully he'll be enjoying himself even more at Miami, particularly if he can get on top of his qualifying pace. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings our interviews to a close, and well, here's a recap of who we've had in the interview room tonight. And as we can see, we need to say a big thank you to our elite and pro drivers. We had 2 of each, starting off, of course, with our elite overall and class winner of Sead Ploeg for Vulkan Motorsports 1, who absolutely led the way by a considerable margin every step of the way. After that slowdown he picked up at the start of the race, well, nothing was slowing him down after that in the wet. We then saw what was the pro classes, JSD Racing, Stephen Donnelly joined me in the interview room, and he talked about there what was his absolutely monumentous drive in the wet conditions to come all the way through from 10th place in qualifying through to the class victory in a titanic battle. Well, the man we interviewed after him, Reece Saunders for Altitude 3M Esports, and he gave his recollections on what was a strong day today, but not quite able to keep Donnelly at bay. And then lastly, we heard just now from Jack Wyborn in the elite class, the MRC 495 driver, who enjoyed himself out there, even if qualifying didn't quite go to plan, given how close it was between drivers, but at the same time as well, he put on a great show and secured a very firm top 10 finish in class. So big thank you to them all for their performances and for their time in the interview room. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you did enjoy today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about how you can be on the grid here at SimRacing International, or what series we currently have ongoing, well, thankfully, this single screenshot has all of it in a single go, because at the very bottom, if you want to join the community, get to the beating heart of it by joining the official Discord, the #1 place to go to, and that link will take you directly there. And when you are part of our community, of course, we do have 4 main series on offer. Firstly, we do have the series that you've tuned into tonight, the Thursday GT3 Championship, currently in its 11th season, with 2 splits and 120 drivers in total on the grid. Alternatively, if you're more of a Sunday warrior and you want to be racing GT3s, well, of course, you can be taking part in our UK Sim Racing Community Sunday GT3 series, which is currently in its 17th rendition as it continues ever long. And alternatively from that, if you're more of a GTE fan perhaps, well, we've got you covered, because we currently have our maiden season of the championship on Friday evenings running every week. Indeed, there's weekly racing to be enjoyed in both GT3 and GTE series. And well, if you have been tuning today and think that we could perhaps run a series dedicated to a different class, we are always open to suggestions, and be sure to pop them into the official Discord. But if you're looking for something much more casual, perhaps you're very new to the grid and the theme of league racing, well, we do have our free to join practice league, which runs on Tuesday evenings for GT3s, Wednesday evenings for GTEs, and Saturday afternoons for GT3. So the truth of the matter is, whether you are new to the grid all the way through to a fully fledged esports professional, there's always something for you here at SimRacing International. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our series and league sponsors, who do include, of course, Carmate Modern Technology, the GP2 Group, and lastly, Motorsport UK's esports division, who we give a big thank you to for continuing to recognise us here at SimRacing International as a recommended community, and long may that recognition and relationship with Motorsport UK's esports division continue. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, we move on from Portugal, and in a week's time, we make our way back to the USA, and for the state of Florida once again, because we'll be seeing our drivers take on the Miami International Autodrome. Opened only in 2022 and dedicated to Formula One, our drivers will be taken to its Grand Prix circuit that's already proven to be a big hit, and you'll see all that racing action as it unfolds in round 4 of 10 on Thursday, the 29th of January 2026. But until then, well, the story of our championship in Split A has been one with many a toss and turn, and in the elite class today, Sir Plague has absolutely led the way and may have just led his way back to the top of the standings. But as for in the pro class, well, so many stars are coming out right now, whether it be Rhys Saunders, Fotis Katios, or many others, and therefore at the Miami International Autodrome, will it be another big mix-up under the Floridian sunshine, or will we start to see some firm favourites be established at the front? We'll tune in then to find out, but until then, we have been SimRacing International. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.